Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Reacts where today we got ourselves the entirety of an album from ex Messiah Albay as well as Rocio del Pozo titled The Karma of Trust. And if we switch over to here, we got ourselves the album on the screen here on Spotify, all 16 tracks of it. I should note that I have reviewed music from these musicians before, specifically Jazz Spells Fame as well as Jazz Can Heal America's Soul, so it'll be good to check out more. We're going to listen through each of these tracks from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Revolution 15 intro, let's go.
We interrupt your regularly scheduled programming to bring you an important message. What you're about to hear is based on a true story. Some of the names of the people involved have been changed to protect their identity. And now, our feature presentation.
It's alright, it's alright.
Fantastic production.
We're going to take the equipment and meet us back at the hotel. So the car's arriving. Let's go.
You good?
Yeah.
How do you think things went?
Things were great. You did your thing, and we left our mark on the crowd. It couldn't have been better.
This is unbelievable. Our first show was in... I better not say it. It's almost like the call of destiny.
It is destiny.
But, Messiah,
What's
why
up?
can't we let people in America know that our first show was in this Caribbean country?
Nah. America's changed now, and I might have to even mute some of the crowd noise out at this rate so that it won't be discovered where we performed at for the first time.
I often think that the music we make can help change the world.
I agree. Kind of reminds me too of Lennon. Like, Lennon was a profound artist. He was someone who started the Beatles, and then next thing you know, he's funding the Black Panthers. He allowed Bobby Seale to come with him on the Mike Douglas show, introduced him and everything because he believed in the Black Panther ideology. And unfortunately, you know, Lennon was assassinated. And now it comes out decades later that the bullets that hit him was from the front. He was shot at point blank range. Like, it was crazy. 6 months after that, you know, Bob Marley passes, and people think all of this stuff is coincidental or whatever. But, you know, it's going to get kind of tough out there because all this stuff that you see in the news and stuff is a distraction. Even the political election is a distraction. It's a distraction till they perfect their humanoid army. And once they do that, they could push the dictatorship because you could exercise your Second Amendment rights, but the only thing you're going to be shooting at is metal. So we got to do something for the people.
I'm in. Let's do this.
So immediately with Revolution 15, the intro to this album, you get an innate understanding of the angle that they're trying to go with this album. There's a heavy sort of political undertone with it, which I think is, you know, thoroughly appropriate. You know, I think it's really good to discuss this kind of stuff in music. It is interesting that they discuss having to do the show outside of America because of the current situation there. They make references, as you mentioned, as you heard, to Lennon and such like that. And I think that these are some valid points that are being discussed here. It sort of makes you wonder what we've got next, especially with Don't Be Scared, track number 2. In each of these post-track sections, by the way, I'm going to be providing a little sort of mini conclusion per track from lyrics and vocals all the way through to studio production. And then at the end of this video, which I presume will be probably about 2 to 3 hours long, we're going to have like an overall conclusion of the album itself with any sort of applicable constructive critique, and then finally my general thoughts from a listener's perspective. But I've already spoken about what I think this track is about anyways. I think it's kind of setting the scene for the rest of the album, discussing some of the topics I want to talk about, as well as just kind of discussing the fact that they've just done their first show, which I think is great. And there is just this natural innate chemistry between Messiah and Rocio that is it's just really pleasant to listen to. You can hear their voices clearly, it's well produced, it sounds conversational, there's chemistry there. And ultimately that's kind of what you want from a partnership. It kind of lets people know immediately as they've started talking about their first show that they're going to potentially have more. It makes you feel confident that what you're walking into is something where the people understand what they're doing. But it wasn't just the conversation they had at the end when they're in the car sort of traveling places. We had the person start using the radio dial to try and find the right station to kind of hear the newscaster tell us about the broadcast that was about to occur, and I thought that was great. You're immediately having a different experience than if we'd completely just gone straight into a track and just kind of like cut the chase. You know, we're setting an atmosphere and ambience up that I hope will continue to be as intriguing throughout the rest of the album. After the feature presentation part, I presume that we have a track that we've played prior. We have some audio from a past release, and then we get into the car, or it could be something from this album, to be fair. But like either way, it's just nice to have that bit of music to hear that they can sing and play well, and then you have them in the car afterwards. So you get so many different layers and inflections there. But what's kind of neat after the applause comes in was, it's just great use of Foley there. There's just a lot of stimulation within that 2.5 minutes of through composed content, effectively. You have these kind of mystical, kind of trippy keys in the background there underneath the vocals, which I think is sensible because it's not trying to be too much at the forefront. It's just trying to sort of provide the sort of ambience there of sort of like intrigue, like what is going to happen in the intermission. And you have like a bit of a bass response underneath there just to sort of establish a ground floor underneath it, into contrast with the presence of the vocals in the mid to upper range. And I think effectively that kind of mystical undertone there effectively allows you to kind of consider further the stuff that they're talking about with the theories on like why things occurred and the alternate perspective on it in a way that's very different because of the coloration of those arpeggios to what we had prior. It's a kind of very different tone as well to the music that we had for a moment just between the narrator and the applause, which insinuates that there could be more sort of stylistic diversity within this track as well beyond that. But also with the sound of the car driving there, you can hear the car audio there. Ultimately, it's like believable. And that riser that you have at the end is just the icing on the cake, how it lifts up into the next song. And you kind of get the feeling that you're ready for the ride that we're about to take. And I've just realized that arpeggiator, that kind of synth part that was going on in the background, was something that was happening when the person was discussing stuff at the start as well, kind of introducing things. So yeah, really nice sort of like connection there. Yeah, in terms of just general studio production, because it was more sort of like a skit kind of thing, if I'm not mistaken, like an intro rather than a song. You have just really solid quality to the vocal takes there. They're nice and crisp and clear. The sound of the radio, the applause from the crowd, the car engine, etc. You can hear those neatly. It doesn't sound too clean when it needs to, but like the leveling is really, really solid. It's not overproduced. And ultimately, it's just, it's sounding commercial grade at this point, and I'm keen to hear it check out more. And I just like, again, the way that we managed to go between those different sounds and styles and culminations of elements in a way that sounded cohesive. Just a great reintroduction to their music. We've got Don't Be Scared, track number 2, featuring J Mark, if I'm not mistaken. It's busy with the production, but I like it. And the percussion, to be fair.
It's solely due to my innocence. Can't discredit, no, in fact, it's been proven. We've been working, searching, certain that this is worth it, yeah. The tide shifting, electrifying, this time it's current. The road dense, but I can't seem to avoid these vermin. Bound to get bumpy at the moment we start merging. Don't forget, that was the reason for my emergence. Not forgetting it's what's making me more determined.
Fantastic bass response after that rap section. Great diversity with the vocals.
replaced by killers. And the minds predicted that if we make the wrong move, we might end up at Michael Jackson's Thriller. What's realer? God bless the dead. Just had lunch with Kalani Luana. Don't be scared, be aware. And this is my spiritual. I remember being with people who are jealous of my legacy. Now if you find someone who's gonna honor it, you're good.
Okay, that was a clean transfer between rap and clean vocals. All of those third harmonies. Nice little, yeah, the cymbal shimmers, the kind of radio kind of spreader at the end there, the kind of wee kind of sound there was dope. I dig that. Because that was track number 2, Don't Be Scared, with Messiah Bay, Rocio del Pozo, as well as J Mark, who I presume was doing some of the rap sections with the verses. Great, honestly, great continuation there. It's nice to hear the first track of this album. I think that the song is effectively saying that even though things are looking like there's a sense of real sort of fear and we're going through some trials and tribulations and genuine sincere ones, I'm not being facetious, it's kind of about trying to still find a way to get through it, that we will be able to make it through if we continue to kind of like make the best decisions we can in the moment and do our best to kind of like get through it. Yeah, like don't be scared, be aware, for example, around the 3:04 mark there, where we're sort of saying, hey, you know, it's okay to feel things, but you know, if you're conscious and sort of like deliberate in what you do, you'll probably be fine. But I still think the minor leaning of the instrumental backing in the background, I think, is a sensible decision because it underlies the fact that no one should probably have to be that careful in the first place, if we're honest. Especially considering the subject matter that we discussed in Revolution 15, I think that's a sensible continuation of that narrative and a different direction of approaching it, which I appreciate. In terms of the actual vocal performances themselves, I feel like Rocio did a fantastic job on the microphone, fantastic vocal technique, very comfortable in the head and chest voice, great use of legato and vibrato and various articulations there. And we are just as good by ourselves as we are with our harmonies, typically working with the triads or like third leanings with those intervals, should I say. In the rap sections, that was just a great sort of alternate rhythmic cadence. They were less colorful simply because, again, like it was more focused on the rhythm as opposed to sort of being more colorful melodically. But there was still like a charisma and a sense of purpose and expression behind us, which I appreciate. They kind of bounced between each other really neatly in terms of vocal styles, and added a nice sense of differentiation structurally within the piece that I appreciate. I think that having kind of a more kind of floaty, almost philosophical perspective to the choruses there, that's also very sort of kind and warm and gentle sounding, is a nice contrast to the more sort of like direct cut to the chase approach of those verses. Both are valid. And ultimately, I feel the expression from everyone involved made sense with the subject matter. You know, we weren't trying to sugarcoat the situation we're in. We're just trying to let people know, hey, you know, it's okay. Structurally, I think the different verse and chorus sections that we had, as well as the various sort of like breaks as well, were good. We had nice transfers, as I mentioned, between the verses and choruses. We had an extended instrumental section at the start with a variety of different sort of like key and drum parts. The percussion was quite busy with an underlying 16th groove the entire time, but I think that was a sensible decision. You had accents that weren't 16th, so it wasn't too busy. And the depth to the mixing and performance in terms of like the ghost notes, the normals and the accents was nice. We also had some more sort of traditional sort of sampled elements such as some kind of clicks and kicks, but we also had some kind of fuzzy hi-hats and hits there with some effects that added a bit of kind of spice and zest to it that I think, again, considering the subject matter, makes total sense. We're not trying to be too abrasive with the backing or the instrumental components, we're just trying to illustrate a bit of edge with it. And what I dig about that is that it continues like that underneath those chorus sections, which, to be fair, the choruses, they do a double chorus in a couple of times. And I think that that's fine. Usually you'd have additional lead layers or something going on in the background to sort of like bring it up. But we were just, I think, very comfortable with the way that we were sounding out our hook lines. And I think we really wanted to emphasize that messaging. So it's totally fine. We had an interesting kind of like 16th or 32nd note sort of snare groove at the end of the piece there as well to kind of lighten us out before the last bit as well. So we were adjusting layers there to suit. And I think that the instrumental backing typically catered really neatly to what the vocals were doing on top, whether it was sung or rapped in a way where it wasn't trying to overstay its welcome or overshadow things. We had nice little kind of beepy keys in the background. There was sort of a synthetic electronic layer to kind of add more sort of ambience to the piece and illustrate a more sort of futuristic perspective to it. And we had some brass as well in other parts there, which was kind of somber in a way, like playing the brass whilst we tell our story there. It adds a sense of humanity to it, as well as a nice glow in the mid-range. The bass was relatively subtle in this, if I'm not mistaken. It was predominantly in the chorus sections, like it was heard more so in the choruses, which just added a nice bit of heft to it. And it also was a nice sort of underbelly to what Rocio was doing on the mic with those clean sung vocals. We're kind of bringing all those kind of brass and key and synth and bass and drum elements together and various elements adjusting the instrumental layers just made for a really sort of compelling listening experience. And there was a nice sort of natural sense of dynamic range in part because of the fact they were allowing the track to breathe and adjust through both dynamic range and the composition as well as the production. And there was this kind of driving kick pulse as well, which I appreciate. Dun, 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 like we were marching forward there towards an uncertain future whilst we were trying to sort of be reassured. It was cool. It was neat. And if I'm not mistaken, you know, with the ambient and syncopated kind of like adjustments with the percussion, that was something that continued throughout the entirety of the track there, which is kind of like led an even heavier leaning to it. Even amongst the kind of very sort of like uncertain synths at the start, or the keys at the start, they're kind of a wavering kind of lo-fi feel to them. A sense of uncertainty there for sure. Thematically though, you know, with the type performance, it's minor oriented and it makes total sense considering the subject matter. We're not trying to be subtle about the overall feeling we have about this, the trepidation and tension there, despite the production and composition itself being rather sophisticated. Ultimately, you know, I don't think we needed to go outside the diatonic for this to prove a point. Studio production wise, great clarity to the various sort of like synth percussive layers, had a great sense of depth and dimensionality in part due to the way they were layered and adjusted. Vocals, you know, bass was like more sort of like forward when it needed to be, but relatively subtle otherwise, allowing things to float. I think the brass sort of keys, synths, etc., the sub layers there were a nice sort of underglowing atmosphere to it. You know, we had it was nice and wide, and the headphones, music around you in the stereo field. And there was dynamic range, and it was nice and loud. Bit of pumping, sidechaining with the kicks, but not too much. Bass compression limiting's handled. We can just clearly sing and rap and have the polish and expertise to do so. We have Sonic Intelligence featuring Ghostface Killah.
Good evening, everyone. This is Barbara Smith for WEXR Radio. Today, we're at the Grand Canyon, where thousands of people have gathered in the canyon. It is expected that Ghostface Killah of the Wu-Tang Clan and Messiah El Bey, along with Rocio del Pozo, will be leading a Sonic Intelligence demonstration in order to ensure a continual flow of good music.
Yo, we here to save the music. Gotta save the music. You know what I'm saying? It's like music is self-aware. It turns 18 years old, it goes in the corporate world like everything else. That's like hip-hop from 1979 to 1997, and then there's a shift.
The music takes me by my hand. Together we will walk into the land. The forgotten promise of a one-night stand. Gonna let the rhythm take my body, take command. Echoes of our ancestors' songs. Whispers of a legacy so strong.
I like that line.
Try to silence our voice. When the music lives on, we will always find rejoice. The dance that people create is the love music makes. Save the music, save our culture from a cynical place. Let the words of the songs show the story untold. Our heritage
Y'all
and
already know what it is.
treasure to behold.
Yo, I walk through the streets like the grand wizard of poetry, and your boy got that bling, so niggas just know it's me. Jodeci, freaking them, big locks like shaking them. Move with a squad, does blunts with keeping them. Gucci trench coats, military velour suits, coat filtered through a machine and made raw soup. Not talking Raisin Bran when he took 2 scoops. One sniffer turned him to a dog like Big Snoop. A smooth operator, cold word 9/11, cold word FedEx, cause I'm sending them straight to heaven. Shaka Khan, Stalker Dawn, standing on Onyx, a gold bird in the octagon. Banquets, raking in the cream on Telerockethons. Wedding day, get married on me, and I'll pop your aunt, pop your papa. Claps is popular, 7 blocks long. Who shot you? Is what I scream, a Big Papa song.
Oh, crazy! It just ends like that. That was a lot to kind of like absorb. That was Sonic Intelligence, track number 3, from Masaro Bay, Rocio del Pozo, as well as Ghostface Killah. So this was an interesting track where I think it's more discussing the importance of preserving and appreciating the way that music communicates things and attributes to culture. You know, it's understanding the history behind it and the people that are involved. And I think especially when you have Ghostface Killah from the Wu-Tang Clan, if I'm not mistaken, involved in that, that's a very kind of special thing. And it was really sick to have that final verse free from, I presume, to be Ghostface Killah, just kind of ending on that note and just like allowing the track to kind of fade out like that had a sense of heaviness to it that I appreciate. Rocio and Ghostface's vocals, again, with Rocio kind of like handling most of the sung vocals throughout the majority of the track after the newscaster at the start there, to kind of tell us, like, we've had multiple occurrences of that, and I appreciate the theater behind that. You know, you immediately are kind of transported into the situation that they're sort of like creating. You just hear again the foley of the people in the background, how excited they are to be there as well, which I like. But it's just kind of neat to not only have the newscaster and the crowd, but then also to have the person sort of like discuss things afterwards over the dun 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 dun, that kind of minimalist kind of groove on the percussion there, with the guitars over top there, just further kind of context for like where the music came from. And then you have that fill, and then you're straight into the additional vocals. It's just so much stimulation going on the microphone from the various different lead layers, the different moments of the storytelling coming together to form a cohesive narrative. And we have a bit more kind of raunch and kind of like fry occasionally from Rocio, but we maintain really solid vocal technique here. And I dig the adjustment of style that we're presenting here. I think it's really important to continue to like offer slight variations between tracks just to keep people interested, regardless of how pleasant your voice is to listen to and what you're telling. With these different subject matters. It was just such a fantastic vibe shift though when Ghostface Killah came onto the mic at the end. Like they just kind of like took things over, and it was like a celebration of their sort of expertise as well. I'm going to be thinking about their verse for a bit there, sort of trying to figure out how everything's well connected. There was a lot of different stuff that they discussed here, but I'm not really sure how it combines. Get married on me and I'll pop your aunt. Like it's, yeah. I like the fact that there are moments in this track and this album so far where I've nearly needed multiple times to sort of really appreciate and absorb things. And I also recognize and respect the fact that lyrics aren't necessarily need to be interpreted correctly on the first time. You can kind of ponder on them and over the day. It's just intelligent lyricism from everyone, really. You know, having a more sort of straightforward sung part there, and then again having sort of more sort of like ambivalence with that narrative at the end. There is a nice contrast. Structurally, really effective. Like I like the fact again you have the newscaster at start with the audience, you kind of like centering the piece there, establishing the theme, and then you have kind of the spoken sort of sample part with the kind of groove there with the kicks, percussion, and the shakers, etc. there. And we adjust the drum groove as well. We don't just kind of rely on the same like groove there. We have a halftime part and then kind of move to normal time, if not mistaken, there, switch things up. And then there's an entire new section afterwards. And you have some of those kind of glitchy hi-hats that we've had in previous tracks there, a similar kind of sound there. But what I need to sort of mention here, and this is something I didn't discuss before, is how the percussion goes backwards and forwards on the stereo field there. There's really interesting sort of panning decisions that are going on here to really kind of spread the drums out and kind of keep you going backwards and forwards, kind of popping along with it whilst Rocio is in the center. And like there's this kind of underlying 16th note groove there whilst things are still halftime and seem a lot slower because of the accents, where the vocalists taking their time as well as the bass and everything like that, and they're kind of creating this kind of big world for themselves within it, with a bit of kind of menace to some of those kind of wispy sounding key parts there, da-da-da-dum, with a kind of uncomfortable note there that's a chromatic there that adds a bit of mystery and intrigue to it. In fact, it's almost like we're not trying to be too committal to a clear chord progression there. This is kind of mistiness and an ether associated with the midsection of the track there that like you can follow along with the bass line, but the mid-range is a bit more sort of like you've got to kind of search for it, with some cool kind of sort of like sax lines and like some of the elements such as the 150 mark there, iterating on some of the existing arpeggios within the piece for nuance. Great use of those hand drums as well around like the 220 mark there for a bit of additional kind of percussive variance there. I know I've had hand drums in other parts of the track as well. There's a lot of things going on. And like you have these lo-fi kind of keys that present themselves in certain parts of the piece as well there, like allowing a further coloration as well as kind of a vintage approach to things to make it seem like we're going back in time. But just like having all this kind of extra oomph to it occur after the spoken bit and the newscaster at the start there, it's not just a structurally interesting thing. It also kind of lets the listener know when we're getting into the actual full track itself, we're paying attention to the different kind of like storytellers at the start, and then boom, we're into the main sort of portion of the track. And like the way that things are put together at the end when Ghostface Killah comes on, it really just seems like a celebration at that point with the way that the percussion picks up and we're sort of like kind of driving forward. And that's almost why it's kind of startling when it finishes, because you don't want it to end. It's just very satisfying. I think part of the real thing that's kind of occurring there amongst the kind of hi-hat stutters and stuff like that with triplets there. Great use of quarters, eighths, and sixteenths throughout this, but just the triplets are good too. But like you've just got the vocals by themselves for that last line as well, which I think allows them to stand out even more so. So it's not only knowing when to have everything together, it's knowing when to take everything away. But just performance-wise, really compelling. Very, very happy with this track so far and the album so far. It's really, really solid. And there's a lot of other sort of note choices and sub-melodies going on. They're not sub-basses, but parts that you kind of need to take a moment with to kind of hear them again. And there's lots of re-listen value throughout this album, to be fair. But just ultimately, you just, there's no filler. Thematically, it's major leaning, I think, because we're being sort of more appreciative of the fact that of the sonic intelligence itself there, the way that Messiah Obey, Rocio del Pozo, as well as Ghostface Killah come together on this collaboration. I think if you're going for a minor key here, it just would have been a little bit kind of morbid and uncomfortable potentially. So I dig the approach we had here. Great features so far. And ultimately, yeah, the chromatic that we had was more of a question note as opposed to trying to be too sort of like dissonant. Studio production wise, again, I mentioned the panning and percussion, how to go backwards and forwards, the transitions between like the audience kind of like cheering and the newscaster and the different vocal takes and the way they're presented. All the vocal performances felt nice and cohesive, produced really clearly, EQ and compression, etc. done really well, not being overproduced. They can clearly just know what they're doing on the microphone. Nice and loud bit of pumping, bus compression limiting's handled, and just, yeah, 3 for 3. We've got number 4, the Karma of Trust. Percussion is phenomenal in this dude.
Who is it? Who can I believe in a world where faith is nothing without me? Who is it? Who can I believe when the shadows are starting from near inside me? Who is it? Who can I believe in a world where
Heavy vocal
faith is
tuning.
nothing without me? Who is it? Who can I believe when the karma of trust is watching after me? Whispers in the shadows, promises left untold. searching for answers, the truth that's yet to unfold.
Like, I'm not trying to say that we can't sing, because clearly we can. Is there vocal tuning going on here? I don't mind it either, to be fair. I like it. I just can hear some of the notes stepping a little bit.
In this faithless world where shadows seem to linger, who can I trust?
You gotta be so careful with that though, you know?
The spirit of women impressioned by men, the children who lost the way, walk with us once again to break these chains that bind. The tears may be passed by my spirit, still small, the way that is narrow. We'll stand to lap up it all. We'll recover a hope that I can find. Who is it? Who can I believe in a world where faith is nothing without me? Who is it? Who can I believe when the shadows are starting from your side? Who is it? Who can I believe in a world where faith is nothing without me? Who is it? Who can I believe when the calm of trust is watching after me? Big cities weights me down. I'm trying to find some sonic ground. There's nothing green on the land. Don't wanna get lost in the sound. I wanna remember music in my heart, surviving the days when no seems not to last. The lights never sleep and the streets never rest. Nowhere to find my place. This concrete jungle again, it's putting me to the test. All busy faces surrounding the place. Gotta keep pushing through this relentless pace. Gotta find the answers on my way. Who is it? Who can I believe in a world where faith is nothing without me? Who is it? Who can I believe when the shadows are starting from your side? Who is it? Who can I believe in a world where faith is nothing without me? Who is it? Who can I believe when the calm of trust is watching after me?
Ooh, fresh.
Let me get ready for my second debut.
Sick. Yeah. Karma or Trust, track number 4. So I think this track is more discussing not being able to sort of like trust or believe in other people and kind of questioning things and how sort of poisonous that is. The fact that we kind of feel lost and alone and we're just kind of trying to figure out what's real and what's not. And I think that there is this way that we approach things vocally which kind of insinuates that this is like a real sort of genuine thing for Rocio del Pozo. And I like that. Not that they're going through it, but I like that we are being honest and authentic about a situation that we're in. I feel like it's subject matter that'll be relatable to people, you know? And I think that the way we present ourselves on the microphone is really effective. We are kind of like low-key in some elements though. We do double track for a little bit extra kind of oomph on certain lines within the chorus as well, which I just think is a nice sort of reintroduction to that point there. It seemed like a relatively more consistent track than other ones in part due to a lack of as much sort of diversity within the structure of it, but I don't think that we sort of like suffered for that at all. Ultimately, we held ourselves well on the mic, hit the notes that we needed to. I do think that some of like the stylization or the tuning that we did, again, clearly we can sing, so we don't need the help in post. It's just like a different sort of sound or aesthetic for the vocals, which I think, especially with some of the kind of note choices that we had in the chorus parts, it did help kind of get those transitions more cleaning. Again, even though I didn't need the help, it just kind of was a nice sort of cut between them rhythmically as well. Nice use of vibratos in other parts as well. It's well handled. Structurally, the track had verses and choruses and other elements there. Effectively, there was also an instrumental point there where, again, the percussion was like a big focus. And I think that that's a big thing throughout this album in general is the percussion. We're very sort of comfortable with our various sort of tones and textures. But then to an extent that I'm not used to it. Like a lot of the time you'll get like a kind of a beat or maybe some adjustments and tails. But with each of these tracks I've had so far, you just have a lot of thought put into it, and I appreciate that. Like all these different kind of toms and sort of kicks and snare and clap hits and little sort of effects elements there and rises as well. Before we even get the kind of main bulk of the track there, we're just setting this interesting precedent here with the mixtures of 16th and 30 seconds alongside the main sort of chord note pulse that's really effective. When the bass comes in around like kind of 30-second mark or something along those lines there, it segs neatly into it. It's sidechained by some of the percussion, so it's not too sort of like cut to the throat or abrasive there. There's a smoothness to the way the 808 operates, where it navigates cleanly as like a more held note underneath the flutes, or like the kind of part that's kind of coalescing with what Rocio is trying to do on the microphone. And there's a nice sort of unison rhythmically between those as well. We have some kind of fluttery keys or sort of woodwinds as well in other parts there to kind of let you know that we're going away from the main hook line, and the instruments aren't. There's like a separation compositionally or structurally because of when they come together or are apart. And I like the fact that we have so much action in the background despite how busy some of the vocal parts are. We're clearly comfortable with the way that we approach our harmonies, and we know how to stack things. And as we have those kind of clicking clocks there and the kind of busyness there as well, it's almost like because the percussion is non-melodic, it can do what it needs to in a way that doesn't overwhelm. I like the kind of fun beat boopy synths at the end there, which are just a nice sort of release from a lot we've had previously, where we're kind of insinuating, hey, this is the end of the song here. Here's like a little bit of extra development there, but not too much, because we're getting to the closing point of it. We told the story that we needed to and elaborated on it, and we're not wanting to overstay our welcome. And I think with each of these tracks so far, even though when you start getting past 4 minutes, it's got a bit of heft to it. We never overstay our welcome. But just like the way that those synths go from side to side and resonate there really sweetly is tight. There's no abrasive, harsh textures within this. And the kind of the vocal styling that we have near the end, with the modulation and kind of like tuning on that, there was again a lot more extreme than what we had prior, but it just almost kind of gives a more sort of like, it kind of gives a 90s feel to it, if I'm honest, and I kind of dig that. It's just a nice sort of palette cleanse or shift at the end to sort of switch things up. And when the riser comes up at the end, it's kind of like a wave washing over, and partly because of that you feel like you're about to go on to the next thing, which you clearly are, Acapulco Gold, track number 5, but just really structurally effective. I dig that. It's just nice to have, again, like more structured, like more differentiated structurally tracks than like something that's more sort of like straightforward. And thematically, I think it's minor leaning partially because, it would be. We're examining a lack of trust or a lack of faith we have in things and how that's sort of damaging us, so there's no reason for that to be minor, or major, should I say. But no complaints in terms of the performance or implementation or any of the sort of like chord progressions or harmonies or anything like that. We're not overcomplicating the different sections there. We have a main theme that we expand on as we go through. Studio recording, mixing and mastering wise, again, it was just nice to sort of change the texture and timbre of the vocals and offer a new approach or different style there. I'm hoping that's something we'll continue to explore, being that the focal point is the vocals for a lot of this album and they're so important. But I also understand that we might go back to other things, and that's also very important. It's just really neat to hear this much range. Nice and loud bit of pumping, a nice use of dynamic range as well. Things aren't too squeezed. And great travels. Acapulco Gold with Massaro Bay, Rocio del Pozo, and Peso.
A Messiah El Bay and Rocio del Pozo production featuring Peso. It's called
Make that money flip. I see you woofing like you wanna get your brother killed. Man, all that ice up on my neck, you think I love to chill. But I can't sit and wait, I'm counting pay, running to the money, yes I love it. We put this chain, this ain't no game, knock off your neck. They get it popping on IG, I get it popping in your jet. You in a house that's even better, hop out bushes with that tech. And killing niggas for no money, we put hits up for the set. Then hit your partner neck, serving rockin' double C. With this Balenciaga on my face, yeah these shades are double B. It's not a smoker in my hood that haven't bought a dub from me. You my partner, any money, niggas said he drugs for me. Just wrapped another sleeve, you know that we outside flex. On Twitter, you gon' die texting, die tweeting. Run up if you want, I teach you 5 less. Like nigga, that's the wrong list. Not concerned with your part-time stepping. 20 deep, 11 of us, and like 9 weapons.
when the streets have a heart, the world shines from a gangster's heart. No cowards allowed in this paradise. We will have to create hope from sacrifice. Making money without fortune telling, street corners adorned with well dresses, man. Children yelling, selling watermelon. The snow that melts from pockets swelling. rozar el pavimento y perderse en el movimiento, en las voces de los días. El sol quizás tenga ese poder de invitarnos afuera. Quizás nos convierta en calor y nos haga ser eso que siempre quisimos ser. Un puñado de luces que van de acá para allá, buscando respuestas.
I wish my Spanish was less rusty.
Another style of production I got in the bag. Call this the Hood Western, know what I mean? It's like the tale of the killer and the saint.
So that was Acapulco Gold with my Sire Bay, Rocio del Pozo, and Peso. I'm not so sure about what this track is about. My take on it is that with Peso's verse at the start, he's kind of talking about what he's doing and what other people are doing to make money. Like he mentions, all that ice up on my neck, you think I like the chill, which I think is great wordplay. But then I think when Rocio del Pozo comes in at the kind of chorus section there, they're more sort of elaborating on the fact that you need to be brave in order to make that money in the first place, that in order to sort of make a living for yourself, you need to be sort of like able to handle the heat, so to speak. So I think that's interesting in part because you have, again, like a different perspective of what we had prior, discussing the position they're in and what they're doing. And it's just more of a kind of a solemn reminder, I suppose, of how some people find success and that you can't really take it for granted. So if that's the case, if I'm not misinterpreted or misunderstood it, I think that, I mean, either way, it's cool. You know, like, I got most of the words clearly from Peso's verse. I think that he's comfortable on the mic and he's like a style of approaching things that works neatly. It's got this kind of very fragrant floral feel to it, a kind of a breezy feel to it. I think part of that is simply because of the focus on the high end for what he's doing in that verse section. So everything kind of floats to the top a little bit and kind of presents itself there, which was fine in this situation, partly due to the sort of like polish of the post-production. I could kind of hear what was going on. Things are a bit more sort of like low-key oriented when Rocio del Pozo comes in, partially I think because their voice is already in the higher range anyways, and just having that sort of like frequency contrast is sensible. But ultimately, I just think, yeah, we have contrasting vocal styles that work well together, and you know, effectively the chemistry works there as well. We don't really interact, but we sort of differentiate, and I think that's reasonable. We have another sort of like announcer coming in discussing the track they're going to make at the start, as you kind of have this kind of half-time kind of dubby thing there with the bass response there, and there's this kind of pulse that's very sort of pleasant to listen to. As a contrast to some of the breeziness again you have later on, but just kind of like bait and switching is effective in this situation because of the different vocalist. Kind of like almost sort of like dubstepish kind of like snare, kind of like reverb tails on it, as well as a kind of really trippy crash at the start. Just sets an interesting precedent there, and you don't really know what to expect. There's like a kick underneath, like a chord note pulse underneath the kind of like rapped verse at the start there, but there's not a whole lot of low end until later on. It does contrast with the start. That kind of ambient guitar layer in the background going between those different sort of like chords and playing those notes there backwards and forwards kind of sets a sense of tension there, I suppose, before we release. And we have adjustments of the percussion as expected within this album due to how much of a kind of focal point that is, but like it's a minimalist approach there in the sense that I think we're trying to allow more sort of like a percussive feel to the verse vocals and that front part there. We're not trying to be too literal on that front. But what I kind of dig is that we kind of can keep up that chord note sort of don't fall to the floor place throughout the majority of the track there. It adds a sense of urgency to the piece, I think. Part of that is because of a lack of the snare, so you don't really get a feel for where like the 2s and 4s are. So I think actually it might even be double time. What I also kind of dig as well, I didn't mention this, but just having the Spanish sort of like spoken part at the end there with potentially Rocio del Pozo's perspective on what was discussed within his verse parts. You know, as someone who kind of understands a tiny bit of Spanish and probably should know more than I do, even without, like, it's kind of like a bit of kind of like an Easter egg for people who do understand the language. It encourages you to learn more. And just the kind of spoken and kind of laughing parts at the end add a sense of intrigue for the next part, even though you don't know what you're getting yourself in for. You don't know at this point. You assume that there'll be different vocal styles and a tight percussive sector, but like you really can't predict too much at this point. but the kind of ambient kind of keys pushing backwards and forwards at part touches around the 2 minute 07 mark allow for a foil to those kind of lo-fi-ish guitar elements there, and you just got different colors throughout this track that are presented in a way that it keeps it compelling. Bass is also a bit busier in this, which I kind of dig. I like the fact that it's very much sort of centered in the low end there. I presume it might be an electric bass as well, which is a nice contrast to the 808s we had before. Or like in a, yeah, definitely with the hammer-ons and pull-offs on the electric bass there, it was definitely electric bass. And it's just nice to have different types of basses just to, because they've got their pros and cons. You know, the 808s are great for sort of like a ground floor there. Electrics have a bit more sort of flexibility and malleability to them. Yeah, great segmenting between the different elements with the different instrumental layers there. Thematically, it's like a 7th major, so it's not trying to be too literal with the happy feeling of it. It's almost like it's trying to say, hey, we're grateful for the success we've had, but there was some struggle on the way, and you've got to be brave in order to make it happen, which I think is just sensible. It's good. It's, you know, it's solid story writing. Ultimately, I have to sort of commend Masaro Bay for... Ultimately, I have to commend the songwriting and production in general, with Masaro Bay being the composer, to be able to sort of create so many different themes that suit the story, various sort of like vocalists and everything like that. Is testament to their expertise and proficiency. As well as, you know, both Masaro Bay and Rocio del Pozo being involved with lyrists. You know, that's great. Yeah, slight adjustments of the kicks as we go through with that major leaning there, a bit of sophistication with the extensions, and a sense of ambiguity there, I suppose, and uncertainty with some of the sadder sounding key layers. But studio recording, mixing and mastering, clear segmentation and differentiation with the way the vocals are presented there to make them sort of like work towards the strengths of the vocalists involved. There is an inherent sense of freshness to Peso's parts in part due to the EQing decisions that were done there. And ultimately, you know, leveling, panning of elements there, well presented, deliberate filtering of some elements like the guitar to make them a bit more sort of like low-key and ambient, and just really satisfied with it. It's getting to the point now where I'm probably starting to repeat things, but I think that just indicates a consistency in terms of the overall caliber and quality of the album, so I think that's an inherently positive thing. It's also great to have people like Peso involved, as well as Ghostface, Killah, J-Mark, just really solid covers, people who know what they're doing on the mic. It just elevates the experience. Lapdancer, track number 6, featuring Killah Priest as well as Honeybee Sweet and Kamala Alexander.
If a dancer can't pull in enough money, she needs to upgrade her skills or she won't be able to make it in the business. Club owners keep a record of who they've hired, the clubs they've worked at, and how they rank in popularity.
6'8", time signature.
The name of the game is money.
She dances light and soul.
I'm a diamond in the dark, dancing for the cash, got us through the night. Watch me shake my ass, leather on my skin, sweating like a sin. Love my sweet scent, love it when I spin, love it when you spin, smack it when I bend. Your money is my best friend. Been through hell, seen the darkest days, but I rise above in this crazy maze. Scars in the glitter, hustle what matters. Dollar bills rain, watch it pitter patter. I'm getting thicker, better. Watch my friends scatter. I've been through it all, and my spirit never splatter. Body like a weapon, I want your soul. Hot girl with a heart real cold.
She dances sliding so
Great use of the audience there.
her moves hypnotize, fulfilling every desire. Fate brought us here, oh, somehow to this electric night where dreams come alive in the strobe light.
Throw it, roll it, I squeeze and hold it. She reveal it, then walk on ceilings. Bust it down, New Orleans feeling. Open it wide, come and get it. Work that pole, Turk some more. Throw some dough, fast and slow. She go low, them cheeks on go. Ass on swole, I play my role. Lap dance till she rockin' to a handstand. Went from throwing Jeffersons to throwing Grants. It's a blessing, she's so advanced. Went from throwing Jeffersons to throwing Grants. Head in my pants to one more chance.
Here we go.
Nobody do it like me.
Damn.
Great. Kind of like, sorry to interrupt. I'll try not to do it too much. I just like the fact that we're switching the time signature and the intensity between the different verse sections. It kind of like shows action, and then we're kind of like letting the person have their applause, you know.
On fire, her moves hypnotize, fulfilling every desire. Fate brought us here, somehow to this electric night, where dreams come alive in the strobe light. As the music fades and the night grows on, her dance lingers on, a tale yet untold. She's the one who has something else to say. She can do it within everything that's bitter and gray. At the crossroads of desire, where paths collide, she'll keep on dancing with fate as her guide.
It's a delicate balance between flirting, exuding self-confidence, and discerning just what sort of fantasy the man is really looking for. And then you put it all together in the best possible feminine package.
And just like the foley of the people leaving the building is just great. Really effective. Like really great sort of world building there. Because that was Lapdancer featuring a wide roster of people. Messiah Bell, Rocio del Pozo, Killah Priest, Honeybee Sweet, as well as Kamala, Alexander. I think I know which verse Killah Priest's was. I'm not sure where Honeybee Sweet and Kamala Alexander mentioned. Like, I know there was like a rapped verse as well before Killah Priest. I'm not sure who did what, but maybe one of them was the person talking about the pole dancers or lap dancers, etc. I mean, either way, I think that this track is clearly discussing not just the role of a lap dancer in their field, but it's also the experience of either being a lap dancer, which I think was cool with that verse there, and then like the first rap verse, and then the second verse was again talking about being the person receiving the lap dance, you know, being hypnotized and kind of going from Jeffersons or like the $100 bills, I suppose, to like $1,000, and it's it's awesome. You know, like it's an interesting thing to learn more about. There were so many different ways that we approach discussing the topic, such as the kind of criteria for being really effective as a lap dancer, to both, again, the doing it part and the kind of experiencing part. So and then we also had Rocio kind of like now singing over top of that to kind of sort of like provide the overall sort of ambience atmosphere to that as well. So really well fleshed out track there, and narrative. Vocally, really sort of like compelling. You could tell there are different recorded vocal takes. There were different sort of like mic qualities there, and I think they all came through really neatly. One thing I will say there is I heard some digital distortion or artificing with some of the takes. I just think there was a bit too much kind of gain on one of the microphones, and it sounded like it was clipping a little bit. Aside from that, it was still very, very good though. It's just an isolated thing within this track, and that's totally fine. It's just something I'm mentioning off my head, top of my head. Having the different perspectives and different sort of styles of communication there with the different sort of like rhythmic cadences and bar lengths, as well as some like the more believable sort of like deliveries and interpretations of experiences. It's just a nice sort of like steady, sort of sensible transition through the piece there, and you know, you can understand what's going on as a listener, and you feel like at the end of it you had enough variety within this 4-minute 15 piece from the different singers and rappers in order to be able to sort of like, you know, especially with the spoken parts at the start, at the end, as well as again like the sung parts, and the almost like a kind of a big showish kind of like way of producing that. Lots of different styles, and yeah, really structurally compelling. We had an acoustic kit, if I'm not mistaken, you know, throughout these different verses and choruses, etc., leading back to it, which I think structurally is effective in part because of the way the percussion was approached. We had like a kind of a 6/8 feel for some of it, with like a halftime kind of almost like a dance, slow dances kind of approach to it. But when then we've gotten to the lap dances elements there, the song picked up and went to like normal time. And it's a very difficult, tricky kind of like movement to carry, but we handled those transitions neatly. I think part of the reason it worked well is because we had a similar texture. It was almost like you could follow along with the drum kit, picking up when it needed to and slowing down when it needed to. And like, I like the fact that we explored the entire drum kit with a mixture of different hi-hats and rides and crashes and sort of kicks and some tom fills as well. Though we weren't afraid of switching things up between the different elements to further sort of differentiate them. I think like having the bass underneath the drums as they varied things throughout with a mixture of different sort of like time signatures, feels, as well as quarters, eighths, and sixteenths. The bass kind of like flowing underneath it and providing a nice ground bed was good, sort of working well diatonically within it with the country leanings of guitar elements there. The way that they were kind of, it sounded like you're at a bar or something like that and a live band was playing. And the way that we kind of navigated those sort of like lines on the guitar was really neat. There was like a warmth to it as they kind of played those steady chords there and guided you through it. And arpeggiated elements with a bit of tremolo on it as well. There was some sort of like sort of curious sounding keys or synths occasionally in those verse sections, which provided a bit of suspense, I suppose, and sort of contrast to those slower parts. But I think there also might have been an organ, if I'm not mistaken. No, there's not an organ. I think it was predominantly guitar, bass, drums, and sort of like synths. But like you also had the audience as an instrument in one of those chorus sections. You had the use of the Foley with like the doors opening and closing, the bottles clinking and stuff like that. It's really well fleshed out. And ultimately, yeah, no, there was a nice sort of chemistry between the different instruments and vocalists involved. Thematically, major leaning, because I think it was more of a sort of positive spin on the situation than trying to sort of like mourn or consider it a detriment, which makes total sense. But it's a gentle major in part because of the feeling of texture of those guitars and the element, as well as the kind of chord progression and bass line in general there. We're not trying to sort of roll with any sort of like discordant things, chromatics or anything like that. It's very sort of like sweet to listen to, especially with Rocio's vocals during those chorus parts, being like a less sort of like intense contrast to those rap parts, even though they weren't too sort of over the top either. Studio production wise, I've already spoken about the kind of like the gain artificing. Aside from that, I liked how things are spread around the stereo field. I liked that we're still pulling new tricks out of the hat in terms of the instruments that are presented, as well as the way they're layered and presented. Ultimately, sort of like great use of dynamic range within the piece. The vocal takes in general weren't overproduced, even though you could tell there were sort of like different mics and different stuff involved there. They still felt relatively well connected and nice and loud, bit of pumping, bus compression, limiting is handled, again, great use of sort of Foley as well as a panning with the Foley there to kind of make it sound like you left out that door. No, it's really, really good. Really good. We do have a press conference one though.
This is Barbara Smith reporting to you live from WEXR Radio. Please give a big round of applause for our two special guests, Messiah Albay and Rocio del Pozo.
Thank you. It's an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
The honor is indeed ours. Well, we have a few questions from the members of our audience. Our first question is for Rocio. This question comes from Robert Ford of Wisconsin. Robert asks, what is the meaning of the title, The Karma of Trust? Okay, Rocio, please explain.
Thank you. The Karma of Trust is a title that describes our collaboration. When we first started off, it was strictly business. I also think for this reason we were able to do a lot of good music, because the boundaries of our collaboration are very clear, which is helpful in setting timelines. But on the other side of the coin, when you start collaborating with someone, in many ways you become associated with them, and that takes trust. So we look at success as the result of the karma that we put into this collaboration and the trust that it took to get this music done. Happily, we've grown as artists and have become good friends. This journey has given more depth to our music and its legacy.
Nice. I think that when you're being self-referential in an album and discussing the perspective of it, this is a good way of doing it. Having the press conference, having the interviewer kind of like ask you it, having the crowd there. I think it's important sometimes to just be very sort of direct when you're unsure of whether a listener will understand the concept of the album, though, because like the karma of trust, you know, like you understand trust and karma in isolation, but to be fair, getting those together is a bit nuanced. So I appreciate it. I think the way that it was structured in general is good. I did like it. It was interesting having, like, after the question was answered or accepted, they have the applause and then like have the explanation afterwards. But I can kind of understand in talk shows when like you've got the crowd really excited to hear someone, they kind of maybe start cheering at the wrong time or something like that. So that's totally fine. It was great to hear Rocio kind of discuss their perspective as well, primarily because for Messiah Bay, they're kind of like the silent party within this in a certain extent. They know that they've had like Rocio do a lot of the storytelling throughout this album, so it makes sense for them to kind of like speak their truth in terms of why they feel so comfortable fronting it. And I think that that's an interesting thing as well to discuss, is it lets you know a little bit more about the musicians involved as well. I don't know much about them, and that's normal because honestly, in this day and age, we can probably all afford to learn a lot less about it, know a lot less about each other. But it's nice to know that they've managed to sort of build trust in each other as they work together with their music and make some great tunes. And with many collaborations these days, it can be really tricky to make continuous material there, to continue to produce things. So I am thankful of the fact that they managed to work stuff out in a way that is mutually beneficial and just pleasant for them both. Ultimately, I do think that this was a nice sort of like little breakup point within the album there after the concept and content that we've had beforehand. After Revolution 15, it makes sense in a way to have this because it's basically saying, hey, we know that we probably need to get back to what the narrative we had discussing things after that we did that show outside of the States. And it kind of lets you know, okay, going into Mirror Mirror, we understand from here on forth that this is a very sort of special arrangement they have, and we learn to appreciate it more. So ultimately, I think the leveling from a production perspective in general was done quite well here. It was nice to have the interviewer, Rocio, and the audience kind of pull together like that. And it did kind of sound like they were in an interview room itself. So it's cool. We have Mirror Mirror, track number 8.
Yeah, we're gonna set the tempo of the song like the moral of the story is like if you're looking for love, then go find yourself, and a little bit of cha-cha-cha. And that's the whole kind of, basis of the structure of the rhythm. I think you got it.
When I look in the mirror, I always knew that the one staring back is special, it's true. I've learned to love every part of myself, cause in order to love you, I've got to love me as well. Some days I just have to pump up myself, treat me right for me, be my own wealth. Then I come home to you, you are my safe haven. Your embrace is where I found the peace that I've been craving. The walk can be harsh, the whispers can sting, but in your arms I feel like the queen. The voices and comments once got me down, but now I know my worth, I know what I have found. Cause the only opinion that matters to me is the love that I see shining back when I look at thee. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the most divine of them all?
like how the guitars come in here or the plucks come in here.
I gotta keep moving, take care of me. I gotta keep focus on my dream. 'Cause the work can get heavy and stress can weigh me down. But with you by my side, I know that I won't drown. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the most divine of them all? Love is the warrior's call. I have to love me first to give it love my own. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the most divine of them all? Love is the warrior's call. I have to love me first to give it love my own. Espejo, dímelo, dame un manto de amor. Espejo, espejo, ay, dame lo que necesito. Dame un reflejo de ilusión.
So what are we going to do for the next 40 seconds? We could have even had like a fade out here or something like that. Oh, that's a cool groove. Riff to groove along to. But that was Mirror Mirror, track number 8 today from Messiah Albay and Rocio del Pozo. I think this song was more sort of discussing the need to sort of be able to love and appreciate ourselves so that we can love other people. I think maybe they've also been discussing the compromises they need to make for other people, and maybe that they've not necessarily been appreciating themselves as much either, or taking themselves for granted. So ultimately, I feel like, especially after what we discuss with Karma of Trust, knowing that we can trust ourselves is also an important move, you know? So I think the subject matter, again, will have an audience. It was kind of nice to have, I presume, Messiah Albay come in at the start with setting the tempo and having this spot, because he's spoken in various parts throughout, even though Rocio del Pozo was like the lead sort of sung vocalist throughout this piece. And it's just a nice sort of like a bit of sort of cohesion there, especially after the press conference. And like the vocals from Rocio throughout the track are really effective. I like the coloration, the way we navigate the various sort of like elements of the piece structurally there, the verses, the bridges and choruses, etc., as well as the kind of Spanish kind of like verse near the end of the piece before we go into that extended instrumental outro. And we carry our voice well. We're fragrant within the mix, but a vibrato as well. No issues there whatsoever. The words come through clearly there. Structurally, again, as I mentioned, we have Messiah Albay verses, choruses, and bridges, as well as the instrumental backing at the end. And I think that makes sense. We've insinuated or sort of like instantiated that motif at the start there with the interesting sort of like old percussion there. And we kind of bring the brushes or like the chains in a little bit around the 20-second mark there for a bit of a kind of rustle and shimmy to the percussion. But we also color things really neatly in terms of the guitars and the keys there as well. There's a nice sort of glow in the mid-range there and some sort of question chords that add a sense of intrigue and suspense to it. And when you're discussing that sort of sense of trepidation about whether or not we can sort of trust ourselves, it makes sense that we're kind of adding a little bit of kind of complexity to the harmonies there. When the pizzicato kind of plucks of the strings coming around the 55-second mark there, it's fantastic because effectively what we're saying is, hey, we've got a rising sort of tension there that's pervasive there, and it adds an additional sort of percussive element to the piece. And those kind of 7-ish kind of like string sections there around like the 1 minute 10 mark there adds a kind of like nice sort of like almost sort of vintage kind of like stimulation to it. There's a very tender point there vocally as we sort of call out sort of like working things through, and it almost kind of sounds like we're drowning in it a little bit. The thing that I'm not necessarily sure about is the trumpet part that we have around the 1 minute 30 mark there, where we rise and we modulate. And like, I don't mind the fact that where it ends up, because it resolves itself really neatly when it kind of pulls out into the next section. But it's just that during that time, it's incredibly tense with the way it kind of doesn't want to sort of like behave itself with a lot of the surrounding elements there. It kind of continues to rise and rise and rise until you get to a stage where there's a release. It's almost like we're sort of hinting at the fact that we want these feelings to go away. But like, there's this underlying sort of like percussive pattern with these kind of stabs and clicks and kicks, and it's exactly what you need in this though. We have more sort of lushness in terms of the way that we approach the midsection of the song. There's like a bell curve where at the start it's a bit more low key, it brings up and then pulses back down. It just makes the listening experience at 4 minutes 41 a little bit more compelling. And to be fair, in that moment where it's very suspenseful, you do have the harmonies on the vocals there that are kind of close together as well, with a sense of tension that I think is clearly deliberate. So it's almost like we work stuff out when we're sort of singing the part in Spanish, and then we kind of like fade out the track, and then again, like, I feel like we could have potentially had a fade out over the last sort of 20 seconds of it, but that's totally fine. We're very comfortable with the motif percussively that we've established there, and we wanted to sort of enjoy it. That's totally fine. Thematically, I think it was like a 7th or like a 9th or something like that. Or like there was like a constant sort of like major second octave kind of thing going on there that added, made it almost kind of like stressful in parts there. Like things were very uncertain. And given the subject matter, I think it's totally fine looking at ourselves, seeing a sense of dissonance there, even though we're trying to sort of find peace. Studio recording, mixing and mastering wise, typically the main sort of like side vocals or sort of like harmonized vocals are well handled. When Masaro Bay comes in as well earlier on, that's well handled too, that's present within the mix. Different sort of like hand percussions, sort of like old percussions there, the bass, the guitars, like all the string plucks there, as well as the trumpets and other elements there, the strings. They niche and sort of staircase on each other in a way where it never becomes too overwhelming, aside from maybe the way that the stuff feels with each other, like the notes kind of how they kind of resonate with each other. But you have this again, a natural kind of like bell curve at the end from a production perspective as well, when things come down for the end. And ultimately, yeah, again, aside from like slight subjective things, like again, maybe having like a fade out at the end there, ultimately just because of a lack of like development throughout that part and having a consistent repeat, it's still very, very good. And we're at the halfway point of the album, and I look forward to hearing the rest. And so we have track number 9, the Father's Day song with Masaro Bay, Rocio del Pozo, as well as Kaleb, Pullam, Lucy Rod, Nathan P., Mario Jose, Pagan, Morales. There's quite a few people involved in this one.
I think it's a good idea.
Look, I'm not going to sing this song. Don't get me wrong. I'm so happy that you are meeting your daughter for the first time. I just think that it's better if you sing the song.
Why you gotta be like that?
Your daughter wants to hear from you.
If I sing for her, she may not want to see me after that.
Well, good luck. Let me know that you're safe.
Thanks for the ride.
Hey, Masaya, you left your bag of Reese peanut butter cups in the car. Finders keepers, losers weavers.
Ha ha ha, you're a bad actress. How about that?
Hi, Messiah.
Yeah?
I'm your daughter, Shina.
I know the powers to be have a hard time with masculinity. I know they do, but fathers love the daughters too. And I always imagine that my daughter would be you. I know the powers to be have a hard time with masculinity. I know they do, but fathers love the daughters too. And I always imagine that my
Those upper harmonies are divine.
Daddy, it was touched not having you in my reality. All my life I wondered, how did I come to be? What really happened between you and mommy?
I know wrong from right, but when I met your mother, it was love at first sight. Even if it was one night, somehow deep inside, I knew that I would have to pay the price.
Yes, you, sir. Imagine your daughter would be someone like she. Well, it seems to me that your imagination has now become your reality. through her ancestry search, leaving the average deadbeat dad in a lurch. But that doesn't seem to be you. You claim fathers love their daughters too. So, as the power that be, I sentence you to make sure your new lifetime together makes that true. Court is adjourned.
I know the powers to be have a hard time with masculinity. I know they do, but fathers love the daughters too. And I always imagine that my daughter would be you. I know the powers to be have a hard time with masculinity. I know they do, but fathers love the daughters too. And I always imagine that my daughter would be you.
Very. The first day together, wishing it would last forever. Stable of life's weather, healing my heart for the better.
I've grown to know what life is, and you got me feeling like an OG. Going through midlife crisis, catching up with the past. The tears bound to last from all the happiness to one that's not a father without a possessor. I know the powers to be have a hard time with masculinity. I know they do, but fathers love the daughters.
Great development.
And I always imagine that my daughter would be you. I know the powers to be have a hard time with masculinity. I know they do, but fathers love the daughters too. And I always imagine that my daughter would be you.
I had a great time today, Messiah. Can I just call you that?
Of course.
This is like the greatest day in my life.
The first time I laid eyes on you, I recognized you immediately. Drawing the lines that map our ancestry, I saw your grandmothers in your face. No introductions needed, asking questions why and why, questions I don't have answers to. Because you were just un sueño, a dream 1,000 times upon a star, not in my wildest imaginations that I think there was in us. See, I would give my hands to turn back time, mi corazón in flesh and bone. My darling girl, you smile, sunshine. Now in front of me, not in my dreams, I wish no. I ache for what has been lost. I never knew why the wind whispers so gently in my most desperate days. Don't ask how. But I knew somehow I knew this pulling of my soul, not sure what this gravity was, what this calling, this constant calling, this yearning, it doesn't make sense. But I knew you have your mother's eyes.
The Father's Day song, featuring Massaro Bay, Rocio del Pozo, Caleb Pullam, Lucy Rod, Nathan P, and Mario Jose, Pagan Morales. Track number 9 off of this album. So what do we think this track is about? I would assume not just literally about a Father's Day song. It's discussing a couple of different angles. It's talking about finding their sort of like their daughter for the first time through online, I presume, through like their digital sources, and challenging the fact that fathers can't love their daughters, because they clearly do. Recognizing the daughter because of their eyes, like the poetry was fantastic. I like those lines there, as well as the judge kind of like discussing things. The sung verses, the harmonies within the chorus, everything was just so, there was just a lot of really interesting things occurring there structurally and sort of like in terms of the performance itself, but it was just so, how do I describe it? So cool in part, because there was never like a dull moment, and it made the use of the 5 minutes 12. Initially when I saw that it was 5 minutes 12, I wasn't sure how we were going to fill that, but like especially without like any sort of like external instrumental sections. But to be fair, there's so many people involved within this that makes total sense. Having the different perspectives of like the male singers and like poetry, as well as the kind of like choruses and stuff like that, it's very full fleshed out, especially with like the start of it, you know, with Massaro Band, Rocio del Pozo, with Messiah asking Rocio to sing it, and Rocio being like, no, you need to sing that. You need to sing this song. and like the kind of banter with the Reese's Pieces and everything like that seeming rather genuine. It's a great song. It's just the journey that you go through with it, but it seems very sincere and authentic. And whether it is the kind of like poetry parts, whether it is the sung parts or the harmonies or the spoken elements or any of the other parts going on there, ultimately I think that the different stanzas and sort of like verses and elements we have there typically sort of fit together really neatly in a way where it's quite different. Not different because it's better necessarily, but like different because it seems distinct from the rest of the album. We really tried to fit a lot in here, and I think that we found the balance. You know, like at the start of the piece there, structurally beginning with that conversation there is just an interesting way to start a longer form piece there. It kind of cuts the track down to like maybe 4 minutes 45 or something like that. And like having the electric bass and that drum kit underneath it as the conversation continues there, you kind of get led into the track as they discuss things. You're following that lead layer and getting introduced for the next things as well. It's just sensible songwriting. It's not too much of a blunt kind of transition there into the full track. It's so full sounding and vivacious when you have those lead elements going there with some sort of like neo jazzy and soul-y kind of things going on around like the minute mark there. The different vocals kind of like in different frequencies, with the right side being a lot higher than the left there. It's kind of stellar in how we approach their symmetry harmonically. But like the percussion is driving underneath, there's a nice thump of presence and sort of like chaining to that there, but the bass being nice and present, a continuation from like what we had prior, and like the kind of stylings that we had there resonate neatly over the kind of mistiness of those sort of like sung parts around the 1 minute 30 mark there, where they're relatively low key and lo-fi in comparison to that. It's almost like this is a gigantic sort of mist over the piece there, things popping in and out like it's an interesting culmination. And it was just kind of neat to have, as opposed to the rapping elements, which I appreciate, to have the poetry and those elements there to kind of like examine a more sort of like rhythmic kind of like phrasing of things, to kind of have a switch up between the vocals, and that was cool. And we add the kind of sizzly kind of hi-hats as well as we go through it there, kind of for a bit of a variety with the cymbal element side of things. And even in that like 4 minute 05 mark there, it kind of sounds trippy and psychedelic there with the synthetic textures there. It's just a bit of a sort of a change in the constant of what we had prior with the groove on the kit, I think. We're just trying to switch things up further. And we kind of go into that part there where we have the kind of whoa, that kind of cool in the background there, which almost seems like you're having a sort of a conversation out in public, which is kind of neat. So you go from the discussion at the start when they're in the car driving places and dropping people off to like at the end where you get the further elaboration on how they recognize their child there. And it's just it's definitely a hell of a journey, but it's a pleasant one. You get the feeling there was a happy ending there. So honestly, really, really solid, really effective. I dug the way that it was very different from some of the other tracks we've had there, but it just shows a sense of consistency and kind of like trying to provide different chapters to this piece, which makes sense considering the kind of like how they're approaching the Karma Trust as a concept via the explanation from the press conference. Thematically, I think it's minor leaning, but it's very complicated in a way that approaches those notes. It's like diatonic with a lot of the vocal parts, but like there's some chromaticisms or sort of modular transfers with those backing elements like the guitars and stuff like that add sort of like an intricacy to it that you need multiple listens to really sort of appreciate, I think. Because like at face value, it isn't super complicated or wild or kind of shifty, but it's just that when all sort of like taken in, it's just, yeah, you've got to kind of sort of meditate on it for a bit. Ultimately though, I think that complexity suited the narrative there, the different feelings and expressions that we had in regard to the subject matter. And yeah, studio recording, mixing and mastering wise, despite again there were slightly different takes on some of the sort of like vocals and stuff like that, simply because we had a lot of people involved in it. Nothing was, disconcerting or like distracting. Effectively, I just think we, these big sort of collaborations with multiple people involved there, they've been handled really smoothly. And I think that's the big challenge when we have a lot of different people involved there. But no issues with that as well. I think that each of these features, as I mentioned prior, have enhanced the experience and made the most of the subject matter. We have Celibacy, track number 10, featuring Cappadonna as well as La Bruja. Bruja.
See you soon.
Ladies are looking gorgeous. Cappadonna, what's up? Western style.
Nothing but sweethearts all around. Beautiful women, all different shades, colors, and ethnics and groups. Looking so lovely and gorgeous, always done up. You the cause everything is real and we stay true. We don't gotta stay together every day, boo. When it's our time, nothing can replace you.
I don't wanna fall
Okay.
in love.
It's kind of wholesome.
Time periods, there is no expiration date for this experience. Cutting out the outside world, seeing now who you are for me. Celibacy, celibacy makes you a star.
But I heard it was bad.
Nah, it's good. I mean, it's real good. It's like ghetto fabulous. It's like delicious. You know what I'm saying? It's like that ice cream dripping down the cone. And nah, it's not cone. I mean, I'm gentle. I'm bigger than most guys in school, but I know that I'm a gentle man.
I like some candles and incense or something. You know why?
I'll make you see flowers in the sky.
Condoms break like hearts.
I don't wanna fall in love with time periods. There is no expiration date for this experience. Cutting out the outside world, seeing now who you are for me. Celibacy, celibacy makes you a star.
That's right.
Interesting. So that was Celibacy with Massaro Bay, Rocio del Pozo, as well as Cappadonna and La Bruja. I think Cappadonna might have done the verses in the midsection, as well as like the slight overdubs at the end, and then we had La Bruja, I think, in the interlude near the end, if I'm not mistaken. Solid takes all round, different vocal textures and timbres there. I do, but Celibacy, just to talk about what it's about, effectively, I think it's more about appreciating the kind of sanctity of that without kind of like going too far, if that makes sense. So it shows Rocio's perspective on it, and then it discusses Cappadonna's perspective, finding a woman that they find attractive and wanting to sort of get with, and sort of like navigating that situation as well. And it's almost like it's a forbidden fruit because of it. Like there's more temptation in part because of that. I dig it. I think that's cool. It's an interesting perspective. Often I hear the opposite, like the opposite of Celibacy, and I it's kind of refreshing to hear something a little bit different, you know, regardless of which side of the fence you're on. Ultimately, though, nice sort of like different subject matter, especially interesting considering it follows on from the Father's Day song. But yeah, I feel like we structured this track well with really sort of capable vocal performances from Cappadonna there. Words came through clearly, nice percussive on the microphone, clearly got some expertise and polish here. There's some interesting names in this album and features in general there. We've got some good sort of like combinations going on. It was neat to have that more sort of that conversation near the end there with La Bruja, as well as I presume is who they were speaking to, as well as Massaro Bay at the start. Potentially not. That could have been Cappadonna, to be fair. I'm not sure. But like, regardless, like just these different conversations, as well as sort of sung and spoken parts. There's just so much world building and variation while on the mic there that it's a very different experience to a lot of the music that I listen to nowadays, where it's like one specific way of communicating, maybe a second alternatively, and that's it. You know, sometimes the catcalling can be too much, sung in a way where we are exhibiting a lack of patience potentially with it. You know, that we just kind of don't want to be just kind of considered just the sex object, but like more than that. And I kind of dig when like Cappadonna comes in at the end discussing all the other adjectives that sort of apply there and appreciating them outside of that. I think it's why I mentioned it was wholesome there, you know. So yeah, just a really pleasant track to listen to. I think in general there was like a glow to this piece with the structuring and instrumental components there that reflected a sense of positivity about the experience. There was like a nice sort of like shuffle and sort of point of precision to the sort of cymbals and kicks and snare patterns and stuff like that, which was really pleasant. Like a mixture of on beats and syncopated there, open hi-hats as well there for a bit of kind of sass and accenting. We had like these electric basses were all kind of bouncing around with a nice sort of presence and body to them, as well as some strings that kind of reminded me of a lot of like the music from like the 70s and stuff like that. There was a sort of vintage nostalgia to it there, a kind of flow that this was a tale as old as time. These kind of, if I'm not mistaken, these kind of keys or resynths or whatever going on in the upper register as well, they're kind of sparkling in the ether. Well, it was just tremendous as well. There was a nice sort of presentation to it harmonically. There was a lot of room for that in the mix. And as we're more present with the strings in Cappadonna's verse there, it's just, I think, simply because we understood that we had more room for like note choices when we were less melodic with the vocals. And kind of having a more sort of low-key bass and drum-oriented element there in that sort of interlude section made sense because we were trying to sort of present a something different to what we'd had prior there, like different sort of chapters and sort of like identities per part. But as we have the kind of sparkles and the different vocalists come together near the end, it's effectively just a really pleasant listening experience there. And the 3 minutes 50 of it goes by really, really quickly. Lots of interesting sort of like rhythms and patterns there, sort of like melodically and harmonically there. Thematically, you have the track kind of lean with it like an extended major, which kind of adds a nice chill, happy feeling to it, which makes sense because we're not trying to be derogatory towards the concept of celibacy. And it's just cool to kind of stick with that for the most part, whilst having really interesting percussion go well alongside the maturity of the overall progressions, with the bass guitar not just playing the root notes as well, kind of navigating sort of different notes within the fretboard as well, giving it a sense of agency and leniency within the piece. Fantastic. Everything's well connected. Studio production, recording, mixing, and mastering. It was just nice to hear the conversations as well as Cappadonna's verse and stuff be presented alongside Rocio's parts in a way where the tracks in general are quite well leveled and presented within the stereo field and frequency spectrum with no weird resonant frequencies there. And ultimately there was a nice sense of dynamic range and the track was nice and loud without pumping. Bass compression limiting is handled. It's just another solid effort there, presenting the best qualities of the musicians involved. We had The Legend of John Horse, though, track number 11, featuring Masara Bay as well as Rocio del Pozo and Shyheim, a Method Man and Redman.
Yeah, we here to represent all the Native American tribes that were reclassified as Negroes because they wouldn't sign the treaties. There is no reparation for us. You don't get it.
Oh. See, like, without commenting on it too much, that's just an incredibly heavy way to start the track. You kind of like law drop, let the person know immediately, hey, this is fucked up. And then you're just left with the rest.
In this industry, rap vigorously, fearlessly, and I take my artistry seriously. Block the block, building stocks, we stacking knots. Drop the top, fuck the cops. Middle finger in the air, yeah, that's for Pac. The beam so red, man, we call it Doc. Stop the press, we ain't doing no interviews, we bad news. And cold like igloos, it's written in the ink, that's a Wu-Tang tattoo. Can I get a sue? You know how we do. I was raised by the gladiators, wanted to be like the older guards, not the Power Rangers. I know math like a calculator, power like a generator. You trash for incinerators, imitator. I keep it fresher than a General Electric refrigerator. I see you later, alligators.
Got the rappers out here lying about the truth, even though his family black thought he was lying about his roots. And these two-faced gangsters out here lying about the truth. If this the stairway to heaven, leave them lying on the stoop. Tony Stark's in his element, got iron in my group. Some people dying, it's evident, I'm iron in my suit. Y'all got gasoline draws and fire in your boots. I'm firing squad fire, I say fire and they shoot. You sliding on ball ties, just retire and regroup. The troops are not inspired, my requirements recruit. To my environment's youth, from a general salute. Y'all chasing the clout chasers, that's a trivial pursuit. I'm the type to pay attention and recoup. And any payment from pagans who with Satan I rebuke. I'm the proof that hit them like a fact you can't refute. Don't be a line in the jungle or be lying in the booth.
I'm Gucci in my hood, I don't need it on the belt. I aced every card that was dealt. My food for thought you can't yelp. Yo, look in the mirror with your middle finger, bruh, and go fuck yourself. Premium in a tank when a rapper wanna link. My pen fully loaded, I ain't never shooting blanks. And I can laugh with you, but my money, I'm serious. I learned a lot in my school cafeteria. I don't do toe for toe, eye to eye. My little bro fuck you up, I ain't gonna lie. And just when you're out of breath fighting off the ropes, I jump in the ring like you said you want smoke. And that's why I mind my biz and work smarter. My attitude, don't give a fuck, avoid drama. So meet your new barber, I'm shaping you up, I'm grooming you like you wanna get this money or what?
Hey, what's going on, Rudo? What you got for me today?
One is knowledge.
What is knowledge?
I don't know.
Like, if you don't know something, ask somebody. You know what I'm saying? You know how many people leave here because they not where they at? You know what I'm saying? They always imagine themselves being someplace else, so the universe eventually answers that request. But if you can master being where you at, you can live as long as you want to. And that's called doing the knowledge. You understand?
Yeah.
Okay.
Knowledge is the foundation of all things in existence.
Knowledge is the foundation of all things in existence is a profound line. It really is. That was Legend of John Horse with Masaya Bay, Rocio del Pozo, as well as Shyheim, Method Man, and Redman. They're talking about the racial injustice of Native Americans, it's just terrible because of the treaty. It's terrible. You know, like, I think this is important stuff to discuss within music. I don't know the history well enough as someone in New Zealand, but like, I can only imagine from what I know, the shit that people have put up with, it's terrible. And I think that it's important for people to learn more about it. So I appreciate that we're not kind of sugarcoating things immediately. We're straight into it with Legend of John Horse. And as we go through these different verses throughout the piece, you just get a real sense of how fucked off these people are about the situation there. I think it's kind of a sobering response to have the discussion with the child at the end about knowledge and like saying, hey, if you don't know things, you just ask. I think that's such a beautiful thing. I don't know why it feels awkward to ask questions. Like, why would we assume we know everything? We should be asking more questions, right? But then also it's like the impetus is that to not ask questions, and sometimes you get told, it's almost like we get shamed and tricked into thinking we know everything in order for people to get us to not ask questions, if that makes sense. I'm going to think on that for the rest of the day. If anything, what I can say about this album is that it's made me think, and I appreciate that sincerely, as well as I want to learn more about it. But ultimately, yeah, heavy track. The rapping in general, the verses, with the spoken part at the start being very authoritative and cut to the point. We had different sort of like musicians sort of spread the truth and put their verses forwards one after the other, and there were no choruses here. We weren't trying to sort of sugarcoat things. It was straight to the point, clean transfers. Very different to the rest of the tracks within this album, where we have sort of a more sort of like verse chorus oriented there. I think, yeah, it was just very sort of like consistent as well with the percussion. Once we came into it, we had that kind of push and like heavy 808 focus throughout this piece where like it rolled in the deep, dude. It was not mucking around. It was like very sort of like oppressive in a sense there. Like it was kind of like suffocating you a little bit. Like there was a sense of danger and foreboding about it. Like we're about to sort of like lay something heavy down. But like there was this kind of malice with like how open things at the same time were, with the way that with the percussion was handled at the start, the way it was spread around the stereo field there. Like we weren't trying to put too much forward at once just to kind of hint at what's to come. I think like the dun, the kind of stepping forward there had a great sense of pace that was consistent with the rhythm and flow of those sort of like initial sort of verse parts. And I do like the fact that we had those different vocal textures and timbres to sort of make things compelling as we go through it. And the bass kind of came in occasionally, but there was almost this kind of like pad in the background, which had a sense of overall tension to it as well. Like the vocals are the focal point, but you had like something to nod your head along to as you sort of like played through it. In fact, did that kind of like backing kind of stay consistent the entire time? I think it did kind of stay relatively consistent the other time. Maybe there were sort of like adjustments between transfers, but like, I think that's probably one of the best ways you could approach a complicated composition like this in short form, is to kind of give the same idea or floor, because you can kind of imagine the different vocalists coming in, taking turns on the microphone to put their ideas forward. So that's neat. That's cool. I will say that like when we came in with like the Foley, the ambient Foley, like the cicadas at the end there with the conversation, the sound of like there's like a wind sound that was like a little bit heavy in the low end. We could have potentially have sort of like filtered that below like 50 hertz or something like that, just to kind of make it a bit less kind of intense on the sides. That could have been like a compression thing with that take, but either way it was cool. That maybe it was deliberately like that, I'm not sure. But thematically minor leaning, because of course it was minor leaning. If you tried to put this in a major key, it might sound a bit sort of demented and twisted. Diatonic, but still like reeking of malice there, and a genuinely sort of like understandable frustration. Great wordplay as well by the musicians involved there. There was one part where they kind of used fire in different ways as well. I dig that. There's another point where they talked about how, like grooming and like how to show you how to make money, another part, etc., which is kind of like not only talking about the difficulties we've had, but also how to kind of find a way through it and kind of make your own way, I suppose, in a way that kind of reminds me a little bit of there's another track as well where we were discussing that. But effectively, yeah, no, the vocalists sort of like spit the truth really neatly. Polished performances on the mic, so overall with the different sort of like approaches, was not being too sort of disparate or sort of like different in a way that allowed the track to kind of come together. And I'm studio recording, mixing, mastering in general, aside from like the low end resonance and like the end part there, ultimately, I just feel like this is just another release, well structured and well voiced track that didn't overstay its welcome. There was no filler, nice and loud, bit of pumping bass compression, limiting is handled. And yeah, no complaints about this one. Very good. And we've got press conference number 2.
Our next question is for Messiah.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Gary from Mississippi asks, how has your approach to music production changed between the album that is about to be released and your previous album, Jazz Can Heal America's Soul? Also,
Nice
what are the origins of your new hood western style of production?
Okay. Thanks a lot for the question. I think it's important to understand that transition. You have to understand where music comes from. Music comes from, there's no sound in space, you know what I'm saying? And, audibly, as academic science, confirms. However, we made it the same elements that are found in the heavens. So we pick up the melodies and the movements, or those melodies created from the movements of the stars and planets and moons through our subconscious mind. The same way plants can take sunlight and turn it to food, we draw that down to make a melody. So I don't care if it's a musician or if it's someone who's working with something electronic, as long as it's an original melody, it's going through the same process. And so once music reveals itself to you as a force, with its own consciousness, it has its own prophets, it has its own people that it reveals certain things to, and that's kind of how this album was created. So it's very special to us, and we appreciate all the support that we received on this, and we just want to thank you for just having us on and just asking us a few questions, allowing us to interact with people out in the audience.
So that was press conference 2. I think it was nice to hear Messiah Obeys, so to take on their music is very different to the way that Rocio del Pozo communicates. I dig that. It's very sort of like metaphorical and poetic. Interesting imagery talking about the music in space and how he's kind of like ideate and kind of come to a final sort of like idea of our music and put it forward, and how like original melodies all kind of go through a similar process and stuff like that. I think it's an interesting sort of like answer to how we sort of differentiate this album from the past. It leaves it open-ended to interpretation, I suppose, and it kind of lets you know that we're not trying to be too sort of academic potentially in the way that we approach our composition. It's a very sort of organic, sort of like it's a very special thing to everyone involved, but it's also not too methodical. We're not trying to sort of make it a clinical kind of sterile experience. I feel like despite that, a lot of the music in here, I mean, it's been quite inquisitive and curious, and I do dig the risks that were taken for the most part to make it work. It's definitely an intriguing album. I mean, 16 tracks, including, to be fair, a remix of the Legend of John Horse at the end. It's just been really, how do I say it, good to hear musicians that are secure in themselves, as a final note. I did like just to discuss like the actual sort of like structure of the piece there. To have like the interviewer come back and have a callback through the album to that is good. But also to have like the camera click parts there and other bits of folio was really neat from a production perspective. There you can really kind of, you can imagine where they're at and what they're doing there and what they're going for, and that's cool. You had the crowd kind of cheering them on the end, which was great. But like to have a completely non-musical kind of element within an album to help kind of break up a longer form factor just kind of lets people have a kind of a chill moment in between these tracks, especially after Legend of John Horse and how heavy the subject matter was. I think just kind of going from that to a press conference where they're discussing their success and their approach to releasing music and stuff is neat. It's an interesting fusion of elements as well. I kind of dig that people are continuing to try to sort of like niche themselves in different elements and find sort of fun ideas and concepts, even when some of the stuff is kind of heavy to discuss. But ultimately, production is solid. Happy with that. We are on to track number 13. It's great. And it's awesome. We've got You Are Amazing. to that theme.
Let's get funky, get up and groove. You prove who you are by the way that you move. The beat is pumping, the rhythm is right. Time to let loose, have the time of your life. So throw your hands up, don't be shy. This is our night, we're gonna dance till the sunrise. Celibacy, vamos todos a la fiesta. Esta es la fiesta.
I like the thumb to it, the pulse is good. Very comfortable with this motif here. No, that was good. I dig that. I like it. I think that track is more of a sort of a celebration. I want to get out and party and kind of maybe get away from a lot of the heaviness that we're feeling. Maybe we're feeling more sort of a bit more trust. So we feel more comfortable with sort of expressing ourselves and elevating ourselves. So that was a kind of a really sort of well connected sort of experience there. I think that vocally we're back to Rocio del Pozo on the sort of the main verse there, kind of handling things within the verse parts. And then we've got Masao Bay, I think maybe with some tuned elements during those sort of chorus parts, you know. And I think that's just a nice sort of transition and push between those, kind of as we go higher, elaborating on a bit of English, a little bit like mostly English, a little bit like Spanish there as well for the fiesta part. And I think that deliberately having a sort of stylized kind of tuned element for those chorus kind of adds a more sort of synthetic element that I think kind of works neatly with the surrounding elements there. And I think that in general, when we kind of understand what's going on with the vocals and we understand the subject matter of the track, it's just making sure that the actual instrumental components behind the vocals themselves represent that. And I think typically they do. I like the kind of dot, they're just fun textures. They're kind of sharp and bouncy and excited, energetic, and keen to be there. And we have that little kind of like kind of like 16th or triplet fill there before we go into the main sort of chord note pulse that permeates throughout the majority of the piece there. And I think effectively that's just a sensible decision, the 4 to the floor, in a way that kind of works neatly alongside those 8th and 16th that oscillator sort of represent over top. The synth elements there, the kind of stabby bits that go alongside those tuned vocals there, are a nice sort of bit of coloration in the mid-range there with some cymbals kind of decorating the uppers. But like when we add those keys and some sort of more sort of low-key in the verse elements as well, it kind of brings it down a little bit and just adds a sense of dynamic range to the piece that we might not have otherwise, especially with how consistent again the groove is. To be fair, around that 1 minute 15 mark there, where we kind of simplify the percussion, take away the cymbals, and we have that kind of ominous synthesizer in the background kind of twisting around. It's a little bit kind of disconcerting, primarily because it seems like we're going for a major tone with the vocals, but then the minor part synth is kind of like saying, hey, no, we're going to be that kind of cool, kind of minor oriented kind of groovy. And it's this interesting sort of juxtaposition there between the majors and minors that I think kind of lets you know, hey, we're kind of enjoying ourselves, but we're also, this is the good stuff, you know. We're not trying to make it cheesy. I think, to be fair, if you'd made this in a major key, just thematically, it would have been a bit cheesy sounding a little bit, especially with a lot of the subject we've had beforehand. So I appreciate that we've got it minor coded. Just like allowing ourselves to be sort of comfortable with that kind of motif at the end around the 2 minute 30 mark is good. It's a short enough track that it doesn't overstay its welcome. And you have the da-da-da-da-da-da kind of bits of extra development at the end alongside the lady vocals with the heavy reverb towers and stuff like that. And it just seems like a very sort of like modern dance track. Really satisfied with it. Nicely decorated with a range of different components sort of intermingled and twisted within it, with some clean transfers without any sort of filler. Great use of sort of siren sounds at the midway point as well there for a bit of suspense and sort of drama there. But yeah, honestly, we don't overstay our welcome there. And it just shows we're just... And it just is more evidence that we're comfortable with performing across a wide variety of different styles and genres, and it kind of gives credence to what Messiah Bell was talking about, the sound coming to them as they go through the process. And studio recording, mixing, and mastering wise, again, I just think the mixture of the kind of like modulated or effects laden vocals with the kind of cleaner takes from Rocio del Pozo are a nice sort of twist and contrast between each other, but they're still amalgamated neatly within the surrounding elements. There was enough room for things to glide, as well as some sort of like more kind of like bombastic belts and stuff like that, and some of the funky part, like in the mid-range. I dig the little kind of like harmonic nuances we had in there, and how it kind of seemed a bit uncertain of itself at certain moments, but you just kind of like threw down at the end. And like, we didn't use, as a final note, we didn't use sort of more traditional kind of percussive elements there for a sort of dance track like this, I think, because we were trying to keep it true to the kind of more organic, unique sort of like textures we had prior. So just trying to sort of keep the album connected in that response as well was good. I'm going to talk about the percussion more in the overall sort of section, because that was one of the highlights for me, but just noting it here is that we're definitely trying to make each style its own. You get the feeling that you are amazing, and you feel better after listening to it. Song of the Crows, track number 14. It's kind of uncertain with those basses, eh?
It's like a show that no one knows. Hey, let's go hear the song of the crows. Under the moonlight, flying the night, living alright without a strife. Such is life if you live with the light. Hey, I seem to know you from the life before, but like most people, my heart remains unsure. Let's ride in the car of life together.
I'm not sure about this one. I don't mean to pause. I'm just trying to figure out the cadence of it. I mean, this part makes sense.
Under the moonlight, flying the night, living alright without a strife. Such is life if you live with the light. Let's ride in the same car of experience. Windows down, hearts open wide. Through sunshine and storms, we'll find our way. Two travelers, one lifetime side by side. To everyone who supported us.
You're welcome. But a miss to this last part, isn't it? Almost kind of like a reggaeton flow to the percussion here. So that was Song of the Crows by Messiah Bell and Rocio del Pozo, track number 14 off of this album. I think this song kind of approximates to a discussion of the decisions we make in life and how we develop as we go through these kind of uncertainties, these crossroads, these moments there of difficulty, and how it's kind of a bittersweet experience in part because we acknowledge that we're growing as people, but we also have to go suffer through those indignities in the first place. And they talk about like the car of life together. I suppose they're kind of thankful for the fact that they're both sort of like in the same vehicle moving forward there, and that they don't have to sort of drive those roads alone, make those decisions alone. I think that this track in general at 3 minutes 12 is pretty well fleshed out. Rocio's vocals, whether by themselves or harmonized, are pleasant to listen to, very sort of like fragrant within it. And ultimately they niche well alongside the double bass, the drums, the sort of classical nylon the guitar, the flamenco stylings of the arpeggios there. And the kind of, again, the kind of like flow of the percussion with, again, the kind of like hand drums and sort of like kick textures at the start. Like, it's well fleshed out with the verses and choruses with a really solid bass response throughout the majority of it. You know, like, we're very comfortable with our low end and nothing tries to interfere with that too much. But I think that we do have double bass, if I'm not mistaken. They do navigate the fretboard quite a bit and sort of dance around the place. And I like the choices and decisions they make, as well as the general texture and timbre of the instrument. Outside of this review, I just do really like my double bass. I'd love to learn it one day. The kind of clicks and kind of like element kind of clacks of the percussion and decorate the stereo field as well in the way that they have throughout the majority of this album. And I think that the mixture of those synth sequences, kind of resonating with some of the notes of the triads within these chord progressions, as well as the guitar kind of playing certain notes of the major minor triads, as well as the extended chords that are present in the overall harmonies there. They just had a kind of flair, whether the harmonic and melodic minors are present outside of the diatonics. It's just neat to have that kind of, again, bittersweet sort of like affectation to it. There's a minor leaning to the track overall, which makes sense, but again, because I don't think we're enjoying the fact that we're having to go through these difficulties, but at the same time, I think we're nonetheless showing an appreciation for the fact that we have the help along the way, I suppose. The thank you to the listener for the support at the end from Rocio is really cool. I like the fact that they're kind of thanking the audience, not because I feel the need to be thanked, but it's because they're showing an awareness of the people that listened through the album until this point. And I suppose as a final note, the kind of that modulated arpeggio or sequencer down the end is a fun idea. It does really make this track a lot heavier than it otherwise might leave, and it kind of leaves a taste in your mouth of, oh, there is a lot of darkness in this one. And you're not necessarily sure how you're supposed to feel afterwards. You kind of wonder whether the next song, Shina's Prayer, is going to lift things up again. Regardless, though, I nonetheless think this track was well sort of structured and performed and composed there. You have flourishes of individual ideas that sort of niche together neatly for an overall concept. And you have enough time to appreciate instrumental backing outside of the vocals as well, just because they're present there without overstaying their welcome. Studio production, recording, mixing, and mastering wise, again, it's just the way that things are well leveled and pumped too much. The percussion went between the sides of stereo field, and the guitar and synth takes as well were present, as well as there being sort of sub-layerish kind of stuff going on with those synth sequences as well. So ultimately, yeah, no complaints with this one. It's very, very good. We just got Shina's Prayer, track number 15.
How did you like the song?
I think it was great. You know, maybe we could rework a couple of things, but...
Excuse me. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be rude or interrupt. My name is Robert Trent from Urgent News. I think you and your stuff is amazing.
Some stuff.
Well, basically, I wanted to inquire about a statement that you made 2 months ago.
What is it? I'm sorry, I got it wrong, but go ahead. What do you want to ask?
Well, the statement was about Lennon's death.
Okay, what is it?
Well, you said that he got shot from the front. And,
well, that's what a reporter named David Whalen had mentioned. Not a reporter, but a doctor. He had did some research, and he discovered that Lennon was shot in what's called an assassin's group. I mean, you can read about it.
Hi, Dad. So happy to see you.
Hey, Shina, how's everything? I'm surprised to see you here at the show. Excuse me, sir, I'll talk to you later. My daughter's here.
I feel compelled to tell you this before you perform.
Okay.
Dad, I just want to say thanks. Since you've been in my life, I've stopped dancing at the club. But I did save enough money to start my own business.
Oh, okay. That's good.
All my girlfriends say they are jealous of me because I have such a cool dad.
Oh, man, your friends really got good taste. Thanks, Shina. I love you. I mean,
You know, I think I'm gonna make an album about us. You know, let me run. I'm gonna dedicate this to you, and I'll talk to you when I get off stage.
I got to thank Wu-Tang Clan for bringing my dad back. Ghostface Killah, Cappadonna, Shyheim, Killah Priest, Method Man, Redman, thanks for bringing my dad back. Thank you, Peso, for that incredible flow, speaking like an enthroned Aztec king for real. Honey Be Sweet, you're awesome. Jube, you're the coolest. La Bruja, I gotta pick your brain, because you and my father have been recording for a minute. Will we see another Ghetto Wars? Plus, Nathan P set it off too. Mario, you're such a great poet. Blessing to all of you and all the listeners. Amen.
So that was Shina's Prayer, track number 15. That was interesting because it helped tie together a lot of different elements of this album that I had questions about, as well as just being a general sort of like, this was Rocio, I suppose, Masao Bay's chance to thank the people that were involved within this album there. Shina discussing how thankful they were for, you know, people from like Method Man and like all the people that they mentioned, how thankful they were for being involved in this project. And I'm just going to say this here, if I don't mention it later on, I'm thankful for those people being involved too, because they each contributed really meaningful elements towards this album in a way that I think it benefited from it. The music was great on its own, and I appreciate what Masara Bay and Rocio del Pozo have done on the microphone, but just having other sort of like voices, textures, and timbres, the poetry, the rapping, the sung parts, etc., I think it elevated it, so that was really cool. I think it was cool to sort of like mention the John Lennon part from the person sort of approaching them to ask that statement. You could kind of hear, to a potentially exaggerated effect, how much they were sort of like nervous about asking the question about that, as if they were concerned that Masara Bay would like have a go at them or something like that. So I think that's why there was the pausing of that. You know, there's a lot of tension there. I think as well, kind of getting the call from their daughter and discussing like how the person had quit the club and dancing and stuff like that, as per track number 6, was an interesting callback as well. So it kind of makes that track make sense in the context of this album, because I wasn't necessarily sure at face value how it all came together, but I think now it's effectively very subtle in the way that things are interpreted and aligned, and now they're far less so. You know, not that the individual messages are subtle, but like the strings have become attached to this, which I appreciate. So ultimately, I think this was just a nice sort of like chance to kind of close out the album before that final remix at the end. I'm not sure why we have a remix at the end, to be fair. I feel like this would have been a great way to end things, but that's totally fine. If you do a remix, I assume there'll be more. Again, it's great to hear more music. It's just I'm not sure why that is after the outro here, but it's nice to have a prayer at the end. It just shows appreciation for the people involved there. You get a final call out, and ultimately you're left to sort of absorb stuff. And I think, again, having a lack of music aside from the band getting ready to play in the background there, you can hear like the bass riffs and sort of like the marching drums and snare drums, just whilst having Shina on their own to sort of like say the prayer without any music makes it very sort of solemn and impactful. Ultimately though, it just seems like a normal conversation there. It's good to have that kind of atmosphere to it and sort of like narrative. Ultimately though, I've enjoyed the album so far. We just have Humanity for Life, the Legend of John Horse remix. Very different.
Why do I have to live between pronouns and adjectives? Man, I wanna means man, I wanna. Can a man just go take care of his biz? Why do I have to live between pronouns and adjectives? Man, I wanna means man, I wanna. Can a man just go take care of his biz?
No color, creed, or nationality can stand between open wide. We are breaking free from the chains that bind. No matter your color, no matter your creed, we're planting seeds of love, just let them feed. Together we rise, hand in hand, living free, spreading love across the land.
Why do I have to live between pronouns and adjectives? Man, I wanna means man, I wanna. Can a man just go take care of his biz? Why do I have to live between pronouns and adjectives? Man, I wanna means man, I wanna. Can a man just go take care of his biz?
Heavily bit crushed.
You got nothing to prove. No one can judge you. Fear is useless. You got nothing to prove. No one can judge you. Fear is useless. You got nothing to prove. No one can judge you. Fear is useless. You got nothing.
So that was interesting to have as the last track on the album. I still feel that Shina's Prayer should have been the last track. I just feel that was a nice way to close it, because then it's like we've got an additional narrative and we kind of finish on that. You could have potentially have had that last kind of bit kind of fade out into like the ambience of the conversation that we were having in Shina's Prayer at the start, and then that could have like closed things out really neatly. It's just a very small thing though, and a subjective thing. They're clearly welcome to structure the album how they want to. And regardless, I mean, I know it was a remix of a track, so technically they do go at the end, to be fair. But regardless, it's still cool. So that was the Humanity for Life, The Legend of John Horse remix. I think effectively this track was more sort of like discussing, it's a nice callback to Don't Be Scared, where they talk about fear and how we need to try and find a sense of like a foundation for ourselves to sort of be able to navigate the world as it is. That while fear is understandable, it's about kind of still continuing to work towards a world where there is empathy, and that fear is potentially the antithesis of that empathy to a certain extent. Ultimately, I think that, you know, regardless of like the adjectives and pronouns part, I wasn't necessarily sure about that, but I could kind of get behind what was going on with the verse parts. And we kind of went between those different sections with some sort of vocal runs and tails and stuff. And I thought that ultimately is quite well decorated. As a 4-minute track that was a bit slower, I feel like it handles its cadence well. It was a very sort of dark sounding sort of end to the album there, to be fair. Like it's got an instant amount of kind of animosity with the way the kicks and basses come in at the start with the voices over top. And there's this kind of peppy little flute synth that goes in behind the male vocals there, but it still sounds incredibly kind of intense. You got this kind of like faded kind of ambient guitar lines in the background there with the sense of menace there, in part due to kind of how kind of like disparate they are. And you got the little clicky kind of da-da-da-dun and amongst kind of like the cymbals, the clicks and the kicks, and it's just ruthless. It's very authoritative. And there's this kind of like fermenting kind of like disillusionment that's sort of insinuated by some of the sort of musical elements and amongst what's being discussed vocally that I find interesting. Especially when you start to get into the heavily bit crushed distorted vocals near the end of the track where it becomes kind of feral sounding and there's a kind of glitchy textures as well. It sounds very sort of like aggressive with like the filtering and the phasing and how it goes up and down and stuff like that. I thought that was kind of an interesting way to end it. And then you have the kind of riser kind of sort of spiraling and oscillating, getting faster and faster until you get that last kind of repeater, and then you're done. And then that's it. Ultimately, I feel like you kind of get lost in the kind of A, B kind of thing that's going on with the structure. And I appreciate what we're trying to accomplish here. And you kind of left in a position where thematically it's clearly minor oriented there. It's like you could have done a message like this where it could have been major leaning and major coded and it would have been kind of happy sounding, but it also might have sounded a little bit sort of cheesy and disingenuous. So I understand why they went for the minor angle, primarily because of the struggle that people are having with the stuff that they're talking about. Then, you know, there's a difficulty living in the position that they're in between those things. Even as kind of Rocio tries to sort of like emphasize a sort of different approach to sort of how to approach things. Ultimately, it's a nice sort of last collaboration between these two within the album. There's no filler within this track, and I just think there's a sense of menace in part due to the textures as much as the key signature and sort of like the resonance in that root note, the reliance on that root note throughout the majority of it. I think there's also use of the flat second and Phrygian mode, which makes things incredibly sort of like monstrous. Studio recording, mixing, and mastering though. I do like the bit crushing on the vocals though, just as a general sort of like different vocal sort of like sound. It was kind of neat to have that adjustment as well as occasional vocal takes from Rocio being presented neatly within the stereo field and frequency spectrum there. The music is quite sort of claustrophobic and it gets pushed in part due to the bass and how it resonates with those synths and guitars, but never to an extent where it's too much. You just kind of feel it, but not to a point where it's like distracting. Nice and loud. You know, a bit of pumping, bus compression. It's a solid track in isolation. I understand what we're trying to accomplish here, and we're going to talk about this album more in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of this album from acts Masaru Bay and Rocio del Pozo, titled The Karma of Trust. In this section, I'm going to provide an overall album analysis of everything from lyrics and vocals all the way through to studio production, as well as any applicable constructive critique, and then finally my general thoughts from a listener's perspective. I should also note that I've spoken about each of these tracks within their own sort of mini conclusions, so I'm not going to be doing these sort of like specifically track oriented stuff. Like there'll be less specificity than the end track song analysis that I had. So if you're curious about my thoughts on a specific track, I'd recommend going back and finding out if you haven't heard that already. But first of all, what do I think this album is about? I think this album is, as we discussed in press conference 1, track number 8 there, it's about discussing some of the harsh realities of people living in the States, for example, struggling with like race relations and injustices. We talked about like Native Americans in one song, I think, the Legend of John Horse. Also the trials and tribulations, the difficulties people have to go through in order to get by, such as in Lapdancer and stuff like that. And at the end, there's a kind of like happy ending where Shina has they start their own business and they find a way through it, and they show, you know, the Father's Day song where Messiah finds their daughter and they realize, oh, I'm really thankful to have you as a dad. And it's just these kind of like plot lines that are explored throughout this album. There's some heavier ones, and some never really find a sense of resolution, especially with like Humanity for Life, where like we discuss wanting to find a sense of empathy and sort of like free ourselves from the fear that we experience by gaining the knowledge that we discuss. But at the same time, you feel that because of the way that track is leaning at the end, that we haven't found that resolution yet. Ultimately though, by track 15, you know, Shina's prayer, especially where they're thanking the plethora of different people that are involved in this, but all the features and stuff like that, which we'll talk about in a moment, you effectively just have that kind of happiness within it. And I think it's a kind of a bittersweet experience there, which is more it's reasonable, but also more believable, I suppose. You know, trying to find the answers to all these questions isn't necessarily something we're going to have within an album, but we do tie up some parts, and I feel it's very good. And it is quite a unique experience with an album. You don't always get stuff like this, but it makes sense of it makes use of the longer form factor for sure. Vocally, we have Masaru Bay with occasional spoken parts with some tuning occasionally, Rocio del Pozo with a variety of different song takes, both melodies and harmonies, and sort of like more sort of quicker parts there, expressing ourselves with a bit of vocal fry occasionally, but we voiced ourselves well in head and chest voice. Fantastic vocal technique, nice use of legatos and vibratos. We sort of speak in both English for the most part, sing in English for the most part, a bit of Spanish occasionally as well, which is awesome. And ultimately, yeah, it's just really well fleshed out along it. We also have a nice sort of chemistry between Masaru Bay and Rocio del Pozo in those like interlude sections or skittish parts like Revolution 15, as well as press conferences and stuff like that. And it's very authentic, and there's a sense of chemistry to it. There's also a lot of different newscasters and people asking interview questions and stuff like that. And there's a lot of world building involved with like the car rides and the Reese's Pieces and the chat with the children as well and stuff like that, discussing knowledge and everything like that, which is really cool. And we just then have literally all these other people that are involved, such as Jamar, Ghostface, Killah, Peso, Killah Priest, Honeybee Sweet, Kamala Alexander, Caleb Pullam, Lucy Rod, Nathan P, Mario Jose, Pagan Morales, Cappadonna, La Bruja, Shyheim, as well as Method Man and Redman, as well as, I'm just making sure I didn't miss anyone. There's so many people, but they typically pulled their roles off really quickly. There were a lot of different rappers which typically had a great sense of flow and pace and cadence on the microphone there. They had distinct styles, sometimes being a nice foil to what Rocio was doing. Other times they kind of feed off one another, like the legend of John Horse there, and it kind of go boom, 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 and it's dope. We have some poetry, I think, specifically from Mario and the Father's Day song, which is neat as well. There's just interesting structures to some of these tracks, but just the way that we're kind of moving from rapping to like a spoken word kind of like open form factor is really neat. And there's a lot of other sort of like really fantastic sung parts as well there. We're kind of in our center, or we have harmonies in the upper range there. And we've clearly chosen musicians that we both look up to and respect and appreciate, especially thanks to like the Wu-Tang Clan and stuff like that later on. But also just generally, it's just very sort of like we're working to our strengths, and they elevate the tracks beyond what they might have been otherwise. Structurally, there are a wide range of different sort of ways that these songs are written. It's a very organic process as per what's discussed in the second press conference. But effectively, you get the feeling that there are verses and choruses for the most part. Lots of main beats and instrumental sections there to kind of like sort of like nod your head and vibe along to. When there are the skits, like the shorter tracks there's either no music or like a little bit of it, or there's like the newscaster radio sort of switching over, Revolution 15, etc. There's some parts where we go to the Grand Canyon for that third track there. Like lots of world building there. And I like when there's no music, and you just kind of hear the people express themselves. Sometimes there's bands setting up and you can hear the tuning and stuff like that, which is cool. We give the listener an experience. But some tracks are through composed, others are verse chorus oriented. And typically the leads are the focal point. The vocals are the focal point, should I say. Or both. Leads and vocals are the focal point. We don't really have a lot of other instruments that are trying to sort of like take over from that. That's totally fine. The beats and motifs themselves are fantastic. We have a wide variety of different percussive elements. For example, we explore acoustic and electric drum kits in a way where it's really well fleshed out, in part because of the variety of quarters, 16ths, triplets, and occasional 30 seconds that we have. The half time, normal time, and double times that we explore between different parts, the switch ups between time signatures such as in Lapdancer, but also the way that we combine sort of main beats and drum fills, the way that we have different percussive hand elements and sort of synthetic drum textures kind of going between the sides of the stereo field. And ultimately we know when to have less and when to have more. And there's never a moment where I was kind of disillusioned or confused about the direction of the percussion. Honestly, we handle the drums really neatly. In terms of the basses, we have a variety of different sort of like electric basses, 808s, and even some double basses. And I think that having different sounding basses serve different moods and sort of ideas on the track, especially within an album where there is just so many different styles of music that we need to kind of flourish and maintain and sort of figure out. And I think having that flexibility in terms of what we represent is really good. And stuff is typically played well, either resonating with the root notes or exploring a little bit, typically being very sort of like well behaved with what's going on there. Guitars that we had there, typically arpeggiated, occasionally some sort of like strummed bar chords or something like that, but nothing too sort of complicated there, with occasional leads that highlight the upper range there, but not in the way that's kind of virtuosic or shreddy. It's more sort of like texture and coding things. In terms of the keys there, I do think we have some arpeggios that we have, some synth kind of modulations and stuff like that in other parts there, some pads, use of rises, etc. Fun sort of 808s as well as synth basses. And there's a lot of other sort of like more sort of like air candy synths as well, little beeps and boops and stuff going between the sides of the stereo field there to sort of really kind of decorate things and make them more compelling. There were some keys as well there that kind of sparkled in it, and ultimately we just had some interesting sort of like synth modulation of some of the guitar parts and stuff as well to make them a bit more sort of lo-fi as we work through the majors and minors, the extensions, some of the Phrygian modes, etc. And it was good. We had some kind of like brass or sort of like trumpets, sort of synth elements there that occasionally were like a little bit distracting with how they modulated as per like there's one track where they kind of continued to go upwards, I think. Mirror Mirror potentially, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. But either way, it was still neat. And we typically catered the instrumental backings to what we were trying to do on the kit, or with the vocals there to kind of have them consistent, although typically Rocio del Pozo's vocals were a contrast to the lower bass focus, as well as any sort of like spoken bits that we had there, such as in Celibacy and all that, you know. But we were not afraid to switch things up in terms of the way we sort of presented our chord progressions and melodies and bass lines and drum patterns, and typically the tracks were well fleshed out there. Sometimes occasionally we had quite a bit of a song where we could like potentially faded our stuff out, but aside from that, it's cool, you know. I probably mentioned other instruments and there's sort of many conclusions, but those are the kind of ones I can remember off the top of my head. They're ultimately, I think any sort of like other bits are just nice sort of like sub layers. And then thematically, we typically matched the chord progression or sort of key signature or the chord choices or harmonies to the note choices, what we wanted to sort of communicate. We didn't sort of overcomplicate things or sort of like make them too like kind of like obfuscated, although there were times where like I was kind of wondering if we got a little bit too dark on some things, a little bit too heavy on things. So maybe specifically Humanity for Life, the Legend of John Horse remix, where it was very kind of intense whilst we were discussing what we were in the verse. With like the empathy and everything like that. I just think maybe we were just kind of we're trying to sort of be more kind of direct, and we figured the minor key would be the way to approach it. Regardless there, I think when we had extensions for a bit of sort of emotional sort of complexity, that was sensible. I never felt alien. Honestly, I think generally the tracks, chord progressions and bass lines, whether they had one or whether they had several, typically suited the lyrics and the subject matter, with the vocalists typically expressing themselves in a way that made sense to the subject matter. So ultimately, we had tight vocals, the lyrics made sense, the structures and instrumental components there well connected, and the themes matched. So that was all quite well done without a note out of place. And I think effectively, it's just the studio production and recording, mixing and mastering. Ultimately, I think I'm pretty happy with the way the different vocal takes were done. I can hear that there were different mics for some people, but that's totally fine. It's collaboration that's going to occur, and I dig the fact that it still sounded quite well connected regardless. People sung in different ranges and had great head cheers voice, but stuff wasn't overproduced. Occasionally there was a little bit of sort of stylization or sort of like fixed modulation on the vocals there to sort of tune them a little bit, but nothing. It was never to a point where it was distracting, and if it was done in a way which was meant to be heard, it was clear. You know, they weren't trying to sort of hide anything. They can clearly sing when they need to. They don't need the help. The guitar, bass, drums, keys, synths, brass, everything was quite well sort of done, handled within the frequency spectrum. You know, there were no weird resonant frequencies, and the stereo field was well fleshed out. Wide variety of things happening backwards and forwards. The music surrounded you in the headphones. Things would pan and go backwards and forwards and all that. There was a lot of interesting sound design decisions, and the use of Foley as well, both from a compositional and production perspective, like the camera clicks and the crowd and the audience and the newscasters and all that kind of stuff was sick as well. Really good. So we did some great world building. Occasionally there was, actually no, there was a resonance in one of the tracks, I think, where like there was a chat with a kid and they were talking about knowledge there, but that's more of a sort of constructive critique thing. They've already spoken about it anyways. It was just kind of cutting that by below like 50 or 100, but then it might have sounded a bit too kind of wishy. So it's interesting. It might have just been over compressed. Typically compression was done well though, a bit of side chaining for some elements when required, but never too pushed. Nice and loud. Bus compression and limiting was handled. I've spoken occasionally though about like with the vocal text being done well for the most part, there was occasional sort of gain clipping or a little bit of kind of artificing on some tracks specifically, such as I think Lapdancer, but that's okay. We're just pushing the mic a bit. It wasn't like a consistent thing across the album. And although there were like other little bits where I was like unsure about the note choices there with the modulation being a little bit too tense, and there's a few other things, or like a fade out in some bit, those are mostly sort of subjective, not an actual issue with the musical, the implementation itself. From a general listener's perspective, I've reviewed a few big albums recently and I'm still kind of getting my bearings with it because it's a lot of thinking and a lot of talking to do. But ultimately, I enjoyed my time with this album. I just want to thank everyone involved with this collaboration, the same way Shina did in their prayer. I think for the most part, just overall, this is a really well handled release. I congratulate them on their output, and I wish Sarabam and Rocio del Pozo all the best of luck in future with their musical endeavors. Because thank you for watching my review of this album from an act named Sarabam, Rocio del Pozo, titled The Karma I Trust. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show them some love via the various social medias and a Spotify page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as you need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next SB Reacts. Spiderhands out.